The first thing Valor Academy gave me was a gray badge with the number 1000 stamped across it. The second thing it gave me was an arena full of people laughing at that number. I stood at the bottom of the central staircase while 999 new students filled the marble seats above me. Their uniforms were fitted, their weapons were polished, and most of them had trained since they could walk. My coat had been borrowed from the academy supply room. The sleeves were a little too long. The practice sword at my hip had a crack near the guard. I had never held a real blade before that morning. The strength test had already placed me last. I had barely moved the iron weight. My mana test had produced an average blue light, which somehow earned less respect than producing no light at all. Average meant forgettable, weak meant entertaining. I only needed one thing from the final ceremony, a class. Any class would let me remain at Valor for one term. Without one, I would be sent back through the front gate before dinner. At the center of the arena, a crystal pillar showed each student's class to the entire audience. Adrian had placed his hand on it moments earlier. Silver light had climbed to the roof, forming the image of a winged sword. "Storm swordsman," the instructor announced. The nobles in the front rows stood to applaud. Adrian accepted it as if the crystal had merely confirmed something everyone should have known. He was tall, straight-backed, and so perfectly dressed that even his sword belt looked proud of itself. Before leaving the platform, he glanced at my gray badge. "Try not to break the stairs on your way out," he said. "I don't think I'm strong enough," I answered. A few students laughed harder than he expected. Adrian's mouth tightened. That was the first time he looked at me as something other than furniture. My name was called last. I walked onto the platform under 1,000 impatient stares. The crystal felt cold beneath my palm. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then black letters appeared above it. "Class, none." The laughter hit before the instructor could speak. Some students pointed at the word. One leaned over the railing and asked whether being useless counted as a legendary talent. Adrian did not laugh. He simply turned away, which was worse. I watched the academy gate begin to open at the far end of the arena. Then the crystal cracked beneath my hand. Every laugh stopped for half a breath. A black line raced through the pillar. Gold light flashed inside it too fast and too thin for anyone else to notice. The entire crystal burst into glittering fragments. The instructor stared at the empty pedestal. The public display still read "Class, none." In front of my eyes, another message burned across the air. "Legendary class awakened, Battle God." No one reacted. The letters existed only for me. A second line appeared beneath them. "The Battle God is not born complete. Defeat the gifted, experience their strength, claim mastery through victory." That was all. No mountain-shattering power flooded my body. My arms remained thin. My mana remained average. When I tested my grip, the cracked practice sword still felt too heavy. The instructor recovered first. He picked up one of the crystal pieces, saw no light within it, and pointed toward the open gate. "Owen, your enrollment cannot continue without a recognized class." I should have left. Instead, I looked at Adrian. The moment my attention settled on him, a faint golden frame appeared around his body. "Gifted opponent detected. Storm swordsman, potential victory reward, battle swordsmanship." Adrian noticed my stare. "Is there a problem?" "I need one duel." The arena reacted with the soft, delighted noise people make when someone volunteers for public destruction. The instructor started to refuse, but Adrian turned back. He had been given the rarest sword class in our year. Declining a challenge from the classless weakest student would cling to him longer than defeating me. "One exchange," he said. "If you can remain standing, perhaps the academy will let you carry luggage. Make it a real duel." His eyes sharpened. "You would be injured. Then try not to miss." The laughter changed. I still sounded ridiculous, but now everyone wanted to see exactly how ridiculous. The instructor allowed the match under training barrier rules. We moved to the dueling floor. Adrian received a silver practice blade balanced for his style. I drew the cracked sword from my belt. Its tip dipped immediately. He looked offended. "Raise it properly." "I'm working on that." The barrier formed around us. I wanted to stay at Valor. Adrian stood in the way. If I lost, the gate behind me was already open. He moved before the bell's echo faded. I saw a silver line, and then the sky. His practice blade struck my ribs hard enough to throw me across the circle. The barrier softened the impact, but not the humiliation. Cheers rolled through the seats. I pushed myself up. A small message appeared. "Storm step experienced. Mastery unavailable. Victory required." Adrian lowered his weapon. "You have remained conscious. We can end this. You promised a real duel." He came again, faster. This time I saw his front foot twist before he vanished. I lifted my sword far too late. His blade struck my shoulder, then my wrist, then stopped against my chest. 3 clean openings, 3 attacks he could have finished. The golden frame around him brightened. My class was recording everything, but it gave me nothing. I had to experience his talent with the same body everyone had ranked last. That made the first part painful. I rose again. Adrian's supporters started counting how many times I fell. At 4, they were amused. At 7, some grew bored. At 10, the arena became quieter. I still had not landed a touch, but each time he used the storm step, I turned a little earlier. Each time his wrist rolled into the descending silver arc, my cracked blade rose a little closer. On the 12th exchange, our swords met. The sound was ugly. My weapon nearly flew from my hand, yet Adrian took one step back. His supporters stopped counting. I could not copy his technique. Not yet. But my body had begun to understand the shape of the danger. He hated that. Wind gathered around his shoes. You are mistaking endurance for talent. You're mistaking a warm-up for a victory. He crossed the arena in a burst. His sword traced 3 silver crescents, the signature form that had earned him applause during the entrance trial. The first crescent cut my sleeve. The second cracked my blade farther. The third drove me to one knee. Adrian placed his point beneath my chin. The instructor raised a hand. I looked at the open gate, then at the black gold crystal fragment lying near the broken pedestal outside the barrier. Something in it pulsed with the same rhythm as my class. I stood before the instructor could call the result. Adrian's sword point slid from my chin to my throat. He could not understand why my balance felt different. Neither could I. I had not gained a skill. I had gained familiarity. His speed no longer looked like disappearance. It looked like a shoulder dropping, a heel turning, and a line that had to end somewhere. Again, I said. He used the signature form a second time. This one carried enough wind to rip chips from the dueling floor. Students shielded their faces. The first silver crescent came for my wrist. I stepped inside it. The second came for my ribs. I let it scrape my coat and raised the cracked sword with both hands. The third crescent descended. I caught Adrian's blade in the crack near my guard. For one silent second, the weakest weapon in the academy held the rare storm swordsman's perfect strike. Adrian's eyes fixed on the trapped steel. I twisted. His sword flew from his hand and buried itself point first in the arena wall. I could have struck him immediately. I waited. Adrian looked from his empty hand to me. Pride forced him to retrieve the weapon. Pride also forced him to use the only technique he believed could erase what had just happened. Wind spiraled across the entire circle. The instructor stepped toward the barrier. Adrian raised the sword above his head, and the silver wing from his awakening appeared behind him. "This is where you fall," he said. Good. The audience was getting restless. He launched forward with everything his class had given him. I had seen the beginning of his attack 13 times. I had felt its weight 12 times. The final version was faster and stronger, but it was still his style. I shifted one foot, turned my shoulders, and swung the cracked practice sword along the simplest line I could find. Our blades crossed once. Adrian slid past me. I finished the swing and lowered my sword. Nothing happened. Someone in the upper seats laughed uncertainly. Then the silver wing behind Adrian split down the center. His practice blade broke in half. A narrow cut appeared across the front of his uniform, stopping at the cloth without touching skin. He dropped to one knee. The golden frame around him shattered into sparks. Gifted opponent defeated. Battle swordsmanship unlocked. My grip corrected itself. The cracked sword became light in my hand. Every movement Adrian had used settled into my muscles, stripped of wasted pride and sharpened into something cleaner. The barrier announced my victory before the instructor found his voice. No one applauded. The entire arena stared at Adrian kneeling behind me and at the broken sword in his hand. I walked to the cracked crystal, picked up the black gold shard, and slipped it into my pocket. The academy gate closed. Adrian rose slowly. "What class did you awaken?" The public display above us still showed class, none. Apparently none. He hated that answer more than losing. The instructors could not explain the victory, but a victory under a training barrier was a valid combat assessment. They let me stay for one term and kept my rank at 1,000. By dinner, everyone in the academy had heard that the classless student had defeated the rarest swordsman in the new class. By breakfast, the story claimed I had done it with a spoon. Claire found me studying the ranking board outside the elemental hall. She had awakened as an inferno mage and was ranked 7th. Copper-red hair fell over one shoulder, and 3 little flames circled her fingers while she read. She wanted everyone to notice that she could control fire without looking at it. I wanted enough points to reach the restricted lower halls. "The spoon version is better," she said. "I agree. Swords are too easy." Her flames stopped circling. "Adrian has been training since he was 4. That explains why he took the loss personally. It explains why your victory is impossible." Claire pointed to the bottom of the board. My name remained beneath every other student. "One lucky duel does not make you strong." I never said I was strong. "Good," she smiled. "Then you won't object to proving it." The lower training halls required 500 ranking points. Beating Adrian had earned me only 50 because the instructors called the result unverified. The elemental trial offered 450 to any melee student who could cross a mage's arena and touch the central pillar. No melee student had completed it in 8 years. Claire entered as the defending mage that afternoon. Half the academy arrived to watch, including Adrian, whose repaired sword now had a dark band around its middle. He stood with his arms folded and acted as though my next humiliation was a scholarly interest. The arena became a circular field of black stone. A white pillar rose behind Claire. To win, I had to touch it. To stop me, she could fill the field with controlled flame. I stepped inside with the cracked practice sword. The black gold shard in my pocket pulled toward the floor. Whatever waited beneath Valor was directly below this hall. I needed the points. Claire was the obstacle. A golden frame appeared around her. Gifted opponent detected. Inferno mage. Potential victory reward. Mana resistance. Claire spread her arms. Fire rolled from the walls and formed a bright ring around us. Adrian tried to defeat you with skill, she said. I intend to discover whether luck can burn. Try not to damage the coat. The coat is the first thing I'm burning. The bell rang. A river of flames swept across the arena. Battle swordsmanship showed me a dozen ways to cut an approaching weapon. Fire did not care. I slashed anyway. The blade opened the first wave for half a second, but heat wrapped around the cut and struck me from both sides. I rolled across the stone with my sleeve smoking. Claire lifted one finger. A line of fire erupted beneath my feet and hurled me backward. The barrier stopped me at the edge. You may surrender before the coat becomes a memory, she called. The crowd loved that. I pulled off the burned outer layer, folded it, and set it beside the barrier. Now you have to aim at me. She sent 6 fire spears at once. I cut 2. I dodged 1. The other 3 struck my shoulders and chest, leaving bright pain beneath the barrier's protection. My class recorded the spell, but as before, it offered no gift before victory. That meant I had to defeat a mage while still being vulnerable to magic. I began walking. Claire filled the space between us with flame. I used Adrian's storm step, not as fast as his class-powered version but cleaner than the movement he had shown me. I crossed 10 feet before a burning wall forced me sideways. A whip of fire caught my ankle. Another burst drove me to one knee. The audience began counting my falls again. Claire heard them. Do you always need to be beaten 12 times before you become interesting? 13, Adrian said from the stands. It was the first helpful thing he ever told her. Claire's pride sharpened. The little flames around her fingers expanded into blazing rings. I reached the center of the arena, and she dropped a column of fire directly on me. White light swallowed everything. The barrier alarms rang. Heat pressed against my skin from every direction. I could not cut it. I could only keep moving toward the place where I had last seen Claire. My hand closed around the shard in my pocket. The crystal was cold. I emerged from the column with both sleeves burned away and the cracked sword glowing red. Claire's confident expression disappeared. I was not immune. Every breath hurt, yet the fire had failed to make me turn around. She stepped back and gathered the rings above her. They merged into a huge burning sphere that cast shadows across the stadium. Last chance, she said. My coat is already ruined. You have nothing left to threaten. She threw the sun at me. The sphere struck the arena and unfolded into a firestorm. The white pillar vanished behind it. Students in the first rows retreated despite the barrier. Adrian stayed where he was, but one hand tightened on the railing. I walked into the center of the storm. Each step felt like crossing a furnace. My swordsmanship could not defeat the flames, so I stopped treating them as a sword. I focused on Claire. Her magic became strongest when she planted both feet and directed the flow with her hands. I could see her silhouette through the fire, arms raised, certain no one could reach her. I lowered my cracked sword and used the storm step once. The fire tore my shirt. The arena vanished beneath orange light. Then I came out of the other side directly in front of her. Claire's eyes widened. She released the spell and formed a blade of flame between us. I struck it with the flat of my sword. The fire blade burst. My shoulder hit hers, and the momentum carried us past each other. I reached back without looking and tapped the white pillar with my burned sword. The trial bell rang. Claire turned, breathing hard. The entire firestorm folded inward toward her in one final uncontrolled surge. She had spent too much mana to stop it cleanly. I could have stepped outside the circle. Instead, I moved between her and the flame. The golden frame around her broke. Gifted opponent defeated. Mana resistance awakened. The fire hit my back. This time, it split. 2 walls of orange flame curved around my shoulders and carved glowing trenches across the arena. Claire stood in the narrow strip of untouched stone behind me. I felt the heat, but it no longer commanded my body. My resistance had not erased the magic. It had simply made my will harder for mana to move. When the last flame died, I picked up the folded remains of my coat and shook ash from the collar. No one laughed. Claire stared at the unburned space around her boots. You changed during the trial. The coat didn't. Owen. Her voice had lost its teasing edge. She wanted an answer badly enough to forget the crowd. I slipped the black gold shard from my pocket. It pulsed toward the floor, brighter now that the flames were gone. If you want to know, I said, help me get beneath this hall. Claire looked at the shard, then at the twin trenches my resistance had carved through her strongest spell. Curiosity defeated her pride by a very small margin. I am not helping you, she said. I am supervising your explanation. Adrian appeared at the arena entrance with his banded sword over one shoulder. Then I am supervising both of you. You weren't invited, Claire told him. Neither was Fire. You brought enough for everyone. That evening, my new ranking points opened the restricted staircase. As we descended beneath the academy, the shard pulled harder. The clean marble gave way to old black stone. At the bottom waited a door no academy map showed. The moment I touched it, something enormous rang on the other side. The sound traveled through the floor, through my bones, and through every tower of Valor Academy. Far below us, a black bell answered the crystal that had called me classless. The hidden door opened into a stairwell that swallowed Claire's light. She formed a flame over her palm. It reached 3 feet into the darkness and stopped as if the shadows had weight. Adrian drew his repaired sword. I took one step downward, and the black gold shard pulled so hard that it nearly slipped from my fingers. This is where a sensible person reports the discovery, Claire said. Find one and tell them. Adrian moved past her. If the lowest-ranked student enters first, the story will become unbearable. We descended far beneath the training hall. Old carvings covered the walls. Warriors kneeling before a figure made of gold, then the same warriors being buried beneath falling ash. Every face had been scratched away. No record at Valor mentioned this place, and no dust covered the stairs. Someone had used them recently. At the bottom, the passage divided into 3 dark corridors. The shard pointed straight ahead. Claire's flame vanished. Steel touched my ribs. I heard the cut before I felt it. A narrow blade slipped through my shirt and drew a hot line across my side. I turned with battle swordsmanship, but my cracked sword struck empty darkness. Adrian slashed toward the sound. His blade met the wall. Claire relit her flame. The passage was empty. Back to the stairs, Adrian said. A second blade cut the back of his glove. A third snuffed Claire's fire without touching her skin. Someone laughed softly from 3 directions. The sword prodigy, the fire genius, and the classless miracle, a voice said. This job became interesting. Cole stepped into the weak light behind us. He wore the academy's black training uniform with no rank badge. Short brown hair fell across one eye, and a thin dagger rested backward along his forearm. I had seen his name near the top of the covert combat list. He was the student instructors used when they wanted a target found. He had never lost a hunt because most opponents never saw the duel begin. A golden frame appeared around him. Gifted opponent detected. Knight assassin. Potential victory reward. Killing intent perception. Cole looked directly at the shard in my hand. Give me the crystal and I only have to bruise you. Who paid you? Someone optimistic. He vanished when Claire threw fire. Adrian chased the movement into the left corridor. Claire went right to stop Cole from circling. Their footsteps faded. Cole had separated us in less than 10 seconds. The main corridor went dark. I wanted the bell. Cole wanted the shard. If he took it, the trail closed, and whoever employed him reached the hidden chamber first. My swordsmanship could answer any attack I saw. That was the problem. Cole intended to remain invisible. I placed the shard inside my shirt and continued walking. The first cut opened my shoulder. The second touched the back of my knee. I swung toward each impact and found only air. Cole never committed his weight. He struck, moved, and let the darkness make every direction feel dangerous. Adrian lasted longer before his first hit, he whispered. He talks more. It slows people down. A dagger point grazed my ear. You don't seem worried. You're still trying to impress me. The corridor became silent. That was better. Pride had made Adrian stronger and Claire hotter. Cole's pride made him want the perfect attack. I kept my sword low. My boots touched the edge of a round chamber. A faint gold line appeared on the floor, leading toward a black bell taller than a house. Chains covered it. A handprint had been pressed into its surface. Cole's dagger struck the shard beneath my shirt. The impact knocked me forward and tore the crystal loose. It skipped across the floor. He appeared for a fraction of a second, caught it, and disappeared behind the bell. I followed. A wire snapped around my ankle. I cut it before it pulled tight, but another loop caught my wrist. A blade came from above. I blocked, and Cole kicked my feet out from under me. He landed on the bell's side, as though gravity had forgotten him. You learn visible styles quickly. That is a terrible answer to an invisible man. Then become visible. Why? Because you want to know whether I can stop you. Cole's smile appeared in the dark. He tossed the shard once and caught it. He had already won the job. Leaving would have been easy. Boredom kept him in the chamber. He threw 3 daggers. I deflected them. The impacts rang against the giant bell and sent black gold ripples over its surface. Cole moved inside those ripples, hiding his shadow among them. The 4th dagger pierced my sword arm. My weapon fell. He landed behind me and placed one blade against my throat. Can you? I closed my eyes. Sight had failed from the first strike. Losing it changed nothing. Cole removed the blade from my throat. I heard no step, no breath, no cloth. He wanted a committed killing strike now, close enough and clean enough that even my strange class could not adapt. The chamber waited. Then I felt it. Not movement, intention. A cold point formed behind my neck 1 heartbeat before the dagger arrived. I bent, caught Cole's wrist, and drove my shoulder into his chest. The shard flew from his hand. He twisted free and attacked again, but the cold point moved with his decision. It appeared at my ribs, my thigh, the hollow beneath my jaw. I stepped around each blade with my eyes still shut. Cole stopped playing. His killing intent filled the chamber like winter. A dozen false sounds came from the bell as he launched wires and daggers from every side. Only one cold point mattered. I turned toward it, caught his final thrust between my palms, and opened my eyes. His dagger had stopped against my throat. My cracked sword lay on the floor behind him. I kicked its handle. The weapon spun upward. I caught it and placed the edge across the back of his neck. The golden frame shattered. Gifted opponent defeated. Killing intent perception awakened. Every wire in the room became obvious because I could feel the hostile purpose running through Cole's hands. I cut one. The whole web dropped around him. That, he said from beneath the wires, was worth losing for. I retrieved the shard and pressed it into the bell's handprint. The chains snapped. One note rolled through the chamber. Golden fire raced over the carvings. A colossal warrior appeared behind the bell. Not solid, but tall enough that his shoulders passed through the ceiling. He wore broken armor and held a plain sword. His face was hidden by light. Claire and Adrian ran into the chamber just as the projection raised its head. Words burned across the bell. When the Ash Titan wakes, the battle god must stand again. The golden warrior pointed downward. Beneath the bell, something struck the earth once. Dust fell. The entire academy trembled. Then the projection collapsed into the shard. Claire looked at me, at Cole trapped under his own wires, and at the blood on my shirt. I was gone for 2 minutes. He was efficient, I said. Adrian placed his sword against Cole's chest. Who hired you? Cole pulled a silver token from his sleeve. A sunburst had been carved on one face. Everyone in the Empire recognized it. It belonged to Damien, the youngest fighter ever named a legendary hero. A messenger left this with half the payment, Cole said. The other half was promised when I delivered the shard. I think I'll keep it as a reminder not to finish boring jobs. You attacked us, Claire said. And now I am offering useful evidence. People contain multitudes. Adrian pressed the sword harder. I lowered it with one hand. Cole could have escaped after taking the shard. Instead, he had stayed for the fight. That made him dangerous, but predictable in one useful way. If Damien wants the shard, I said, he knows what the bell does. Claire examined the fading words. Then we need the Academy archive. The sealed archive was available only to senior-ranked students. My 2 victories had lifted me to rank 812. The current Academy champion held rank 1. His name was Grant. The instructors found us before dawn. They sealed the hidden door, took statements, and pretended an underground bell taller than a building was a routine maintenance concern. They could not take the shard. It had melted into my palm, leaving a black gold mark beneath the skin. By noon, the senior champion challenged me publicly. Grant was not subtle. He walked into the dining hall wearing full white training armor, placed his gauntlet on my table, and cracked the wood. You entered a forbidden hall, injured 3 ranked students, and spread a story involving a legendary hero, he said. Valor does not need another attention seeker. Claire glanced at the table. Technically, he injured 1. The other 2 arrived pre-irritated. Grant ignored her. Defeat me, and you may use my archive privilege. Lose, and you surrender the crystal mark to the instructors. I looked at the cracked table beneath his hand. Do you always wear armor to lunch? The Academy champion is always prepared. For soup? Cole laughed from somewhere above us. No one had invited him. No one could see where he was sitting. Grant's expression did not change. That took more control than Adrian possessed and less humor than Claire considered healthy. The duel was scheduled for sunset. Grant spent the afternoon demonstrating why he held rank 1. In the same arena where Adrian had fallen, he faced 6 senior challengers at once. His class, Fortress Knight, wrapped him in layers of white light. Swords broke against his shield. Magic scattered from his armor. When a spear user tried to circle him, Grant crossed the floor in 3 crushing steps and drove the entire group through the barrier. He did not fight like a slow wall. He fought like a fortress thrown from a cliff. The audience began filling the seats hours before our match. New students wanted to see whether Adrian's defeat had been luck. Seniors wanted Grant to erase the insult. Instructors wanted the strange classless problem solved under rules they controlled. I wanted the archive. I also wanted Grant's armor. When he entered the arena, the white light around him formed the outline of a castle gate. He carried a blunt training lance in one hand and a tower shield in the other. Both were reinforced to withstand senior-level power. I walked in with the cracked practice sword. The crowd had started to like that sword. It looked terrible in every official sketch, which made it memorable. A golden frame closed around Grant. Gifted opponent detected. Fortress Knight. Potential victory reward. War armor. Grant planted his shield. You may choose another weapon. This one has never lost. Adrian made a disgusted sound from the first row. It has spent most of its life on the floor. Still undefeated. The bell rang. Grant charged. The lance struck before I could finish my storm step. I blocked with the cracked sword. The weapon folded. The arena turned sideways, and I hit the barrier hard enough to see white. Grant did not give me time to fall properly. His shield slammed into my chest and drove me across the floor. War armor had not awakened. My mana resistance did nothing against physical force. Killing intent perception warned me where the next impact would land. But Grant's entire body was an impact. Knowing the fortress was coming did not move it. I cut at his knee. Battle swordsmanship found the joint, but white light layered over it. My blade bounced. He drove the shield down. Stone burst beneath me. Surrender, Grant said. Your tricks require fragile opponents. I rolled before the lance pinned my coat. Adrian will be hurt when he hears that. I heard it, Adrian called. Grant swung the shield sideways. I stepped over the edge, landed on its rim, and ran up his armored arm. My sword struck the side of his helmet. A perfect hit produced a tiny scratch. Grant caught me with the lance shaft and threw me back to the center. 3 exchanges had made the problem clear. I could see every opening. His class simply made those openings stronger than my body. Grant raised the shield. White light spread across the arena floor and locked his stance to the stone. There is no path through a fortress. Then stop standing behind it. I attacked the shield directly. The cracked sword hit once, twice, then 10 times. Battle swordsmanship changed between Adrian's quick angles and heavier cuts I had watched seniors use. Grant blocked everything. Each impact traveled back through my wrists. The audience saw desperation. Grant saw proof that I had finally run out of surprises. I saw his patience thinning. He wanted a decisive end. A fortress could wait forever, but the champion inside it had pride. I struck the same point near the center of the shield until he became tired of hearing it. Grant pushed forward. Killing intent perception chilled across my chest. The shield was no longer defense. The moment Grant committed it as a weapon, his perfect wall opened behind the motion. I dropped my sword. His shield smashed into me. Ribs bent. My boots carved 2 trenches through the arena. I caught the top edge with both hands and stayed upright. Grant's eyes widened behind his visor. I had no armor yet. I was still the weakest body in the academy. But I had chosen the direction of the impact, held his shield close, and prevented him from drawing the lance back. I stepped into the space beneath his arms and drove my forehead into his helmet. The sound rang like a bell. Grant staggered. I struck the breastplate with my palm. Battle swordsmanship was not limited to swords. It had taught my body how fighters created and lost balance. I turned my hips and threw the academy champion over my shoulder. His armor hit the floor. The arena cratered. Grant rose inside a storm of white light. The castle gate behind him grew taller. He threw aside the shield and gripped the lance with both hands. You wanted me to attack, he said. I wanted you to stop hiding. He lowered the lance. The instructor shouted a warning. Grant's final charge had broken 3 arena barriers during last year's championship. White light packed around the blunt point until it looked sharp enough to pierce the tower behind me. I picked up the cracked sword and planted my feet on the center mark. Claire stood from her seat. Adrian leaned over the railing. Cole stopped laughing. Grant crossed the arena. Killing intent perception showed me the line. Mana resistance kept the white energy from freezing my muscles. Battle swordsmanship placed my blade against the exact side of the lance point. The physical force still hit like a collapsing wall. My sword shattered down to half its length. Grant's lance reached my chest. Black gold light poured from the mark in my palm. Gifted opponent's defining strength fully experienced. I had not defeated him yet, but my body had endured the complete force of his class without leaving the circle. Thin plates of gold-edged darkness spread over my arms, shoulders, and chest. They formed directly over my torn uniform, light as cloth and harder with every heartbeat. Grant drove forward. My boots did not move. The lance bent. Cracks raced from its point to its guard. The reinforced weapon burst into white fragments around my hand. The charge continued without it. Grant's armored fist came toward my face. I stepped past the punch and placed the broken edge of my sword against the seam beneath his helmet. He froze. The black gold armor over me became solid. Gifted opponent defeated. War armor unlocked. Grant looked down. My boots remained inside the same center mark where I had planted them. His charge had destroyed the floor in a line behind him, but the single circle beneath my feet was untouched. The barrier declared my victory. I lowered the broken sword and inspected what remained. Now it looks intentional. Claire covered her face. Adrian stared at the armor. Cole began applauding alone, slow enough to make the silence worse. Then the entire arena rose. They did not cheer because they understood me. They cheered because the rank 1 senior champion had thrown his strongest attack at the weakest student, and I had made the weapon break first. Grant removed his helmet. Anger had left his face. In its place was the expression of a man rebuilding every opinion he had formed that week. "The archive opens at dawn," he said. "I will escort you. Wear less armor. The shelves may feel threatened." For the first time, Grant almost smiled. My rank climbed from 812 to 96. The ranking board added a temporary title beneath my name, Broken Crystal Swordsman. It was inaccurate in 3 ways. I had broken the crystal, the sword, and now the champion, but I decided not to complain. At dawn, Grant opened the senior archive. Claire brought enough notepaper to catalog a kingdom. Adrian claimed he was only there to verify the records. Cole was already asleep on top of a shelf when we arrived. The black gold mark led me to a locked case containing the history of the first battle god. Most pages had been cut out. One remained. It showed the Black Bell, the buried Ash Titan, and a vault sealed beneath the northern training grounds. At the bottom was a recent entry. Damien had entered the vault 3 years earlier. He had left carrying nothing. The next page listed the only key capable of reopening it. That key would be awarded in 2 weeks to the champion of the rival school's grand arena. As Claire read the line aloud, every bell in Valor began to ring. Outside, 4 rival school airships appeared over the academy. Their banners covered the morning sky. A voice amplified by magic rolled across the grounds. "Valor Academy," it announced. "Present the students who intend to lose your key." Adrian reached for his sword. I looked at my new rank, my broken weapon, and the black gold armor fading beneath my coat. The audience had just become much larger. The rival school's grand arena occupied a floating island above the center of the empire. 4 bridges connected it to 4 academy airships. Thousands of spectators filled the ringed stadium, and crystal screens carried every match to cities I had never seen. Valor's instructors selected Adrian, Claire, Grant, and me as the main team. Cole selected himself. The official roster listed him as a reserve because no one could prove he had entered the airship. Our opponents studied the rankings before the opening ceremony. They saw Grant at 1, Claire at 7, Adrian at 12, and me at 96. They did not see that my rank had moved 900 places in less than 2 weeks. Every school captain reached the same conclusion. Remove the weak student first. That was convenient. The tournament required us to claim 3 signal towers across a shifting battlefield. The last team standing received the black iron key to the Titan Vault. If I failed, Damien could reach it through whatever agents he had placed among the schools. I wanted the key, and an island full of talented opponents had arranged themselves between me and the reward. The opening ceremony began without us. Each rival school made a separate entrance. One captain rode a stone lion through a wall. Another descended on a staircase of water. The students from Storm Peak Academy marched beneath a thundercloud shaped like a spear. Their champion, Wyatt, stood at its point with pale blonde hair and a long lightning weapon resting across his shoulders. Valor's platform remained empty. The announcer repeated our name. Spectators began laughing. Our instructors searched the preparation rooms. Claire found me on the airship roof, waiting beside a mooring chain. "You told the team the ceremony started 20 minutes later," she said. "The schedule was confusing. You changed the schedule." Adrian arrived behind her. He wanted everyone else to finish their entrances. I looked at the rival banners covering the arena. It would have been rude to interrupt. The final horn sounded. Valor had 10 seconds before disqualification. I drew the broken practice sword and cut the mooring chain. It snapped across the roof, struck the launch rail, and flung our entire platform from the airship. Claire screamed something unflattering. Grant planted his shield. Adrian refused to bend his knees out of principle. We flew over the last bridge, trailing black gold sparks from my blade. The platform crashed into Valor's empty position at the exact moment the horn ended. Stone erupted around us. My war armor spread through my feet and held the center together. When the dust cleared, I was standing at the front with the broken sword over one shoulder. Claire's hair pointed in 3 directions. Adrian looked perfect, which was irritating. Grant stepped down as if launching platforms were normal transportation. The stadium roared. "You did that on purpose," Claire said through a smile meant for the crowd. The chain looked weak. "I am going to burn your next coat." Wyatt watched from beneath his thundercloud. He had stopped smiling. The battlefield formed into a ruined city with 3 glowing towers. Teams scattered when the bell rang. Valor's opponents did not attack one at a time. 11 students from 2 schools converged on me in the first street, while their strongest fighters kept Grant and Adrian busy. "Yield your badge," one of them said. "We only need to eliminate the weak link." I stood in front of Claire while she activated our first tower. Grant held a crossroads farther east. Adrian's silver wind flashed on the rooftops. I could not chase the attackers without leaving Claire open, so I did not move from the street. The first swordsman rushed me. Killing intent perception placed a cold line against my left shoulder. I turned the broken practice sword and tapped his weapon aside. The second attacker cast chains from the pavement. Mana resistance let me pull my feet through before the spell hardened. A hammer struck my back. War armor caught it and grew darker. I returned one cut. The air folded across the street. Every attacking weapon broke at the same height. Swords lost their tips. Spears became staffs. The hammer split around its handle. Not one uniform beneath them was touched. The 11 students stared at what remained in their hands. "You may want to select another link," I said. Claire finished the tower. Fire rose behind us in Valor's colors. The attackers fled. Cole appeared on a broken balcony, waving their stolen badges. "You were supposed to be reserve," Claire called. "I am reserving these." The tournament changed terrain before we could leave the district. Bells rang beneath the floating island. The ruined streets folded downward while a forest of stone pillars rose around the second signal tower. Each pillar carried a different academy crest. The moment a student touched one, the pillar copied that student's mana and fired it across the field. Our rivals had already occupied the high ground. A wind class waited on the tallest column. 2 earth fighters guarded the narrow approaches. A girl with a glass bow stood beside the tower and aimed at Claire. They had watched our first fight and adjusted. No one rushed me this time. They attacked the people around me. The glass arrow crossed the forest before its string made a sound. Killing intent perception warned me where it would end. I caught it behind my back, 1 inch from Claire's forehead. She looked at the arrow between my fingers. "You could have told me to move. You were explaining something." I was insulting Cole. "Exactly." The second arrow divided into 20 shards. I opened war armor across my shoulders and stepped in front of Claire. Glass broke against black gold plates. The earth fighters took that moment to bring down 2 pillars on Adrian and Grant. Grant caught one with his shield. Adrian cut the other into pieces, then looked toward me to make sure I had noticed. "Adequate," I called. Silver wind burst around him. He crossed 3 columns and eliminated both earth fighters before their falling rocks reached the floor. Claire stared at me. "You did that on purpose." He responds well to encouragement. The wind class on the tallest pillar created a spinning barrier around the tower. The glass archer fired through it, curving shots along the storm. We could wait for Grant to climb, but enemy teams were approaching behind us. If they surrounded the forest, Valor would lose the central route. I gave Claire the arrow I had caught. "Can you heat this without melting it?" "Obviously." "Good, make it bright." She filled the glass with white fire. I set the arrow across the flat of my broken blade, drew the sword back as though it were a bow, and struck. The glowing arrow vanished into the wind barrier. The archer laughed when the storm caught it. Her own curved current carried the arrow around the tower exactly as designed. It circled once, twice, growing brighter each time Claire's fire absorbed loose mana. On the third turn, every crystal screen in the stadium found the moving point of light. I waited until it passed behind the signal tower. Then I cut the wind. The arrow continued straight. It struck the tower switch from the rear and activated Valor's second signal without touching either defender. Gold fire erupted above the stone forest. The wind class stopped spinning. The glass archer lowered her bow. They had prepared for a charge and lost to 1 basic strike from the ground. "That was elaborate," Claire said. "It looked better with the fire. You could have cut the switch from here." The screens were facing the arrow. Adrian landed beside us just in time to hear that. "You are treating the grand arena like a stage." The roar of the crowd rolled across the floating island. "It is a stage." Our rivals withdrew from the forest, but the next team blocked the western bridge with a summoned sea serpent. Its blue body coiled around 2 districts. Every movement flooded the lower streets. The summoner stood safely on its head and announced that Valor could surrender the tower or be washed from the island. Grant braced behind his shield. Claire gathered enough fire to fill the district with steam. Adrian wanted to run along the creature's spine. All three options would work eventually. None would keep our badges dry. I disliked wet uniforms. The serpent opened its mouth and released a wall of water. I planted the battle standard's future position in my imagination, though I did not possess it yet. War armor formed down both arms. I drove the broken practice sword into the street and lifted. Battle swordsmanship turned the simple upward motion into a broad golden line. It did not cut the water apart. It cut the stone beneath it, raising an entire slab of street like a ramp. The flood climbed the sudden slope, passed over our heads in a clear blue arch, and crashed onto the team that had summoned it. The sea serpent followed its own current. Its enormous head slid down the raised avenue and stopped directly in front of me. The summoner clung to one horn, soaked and speechless. I tapped his badge with the broken sword. The serpent dissolved. Thousands of gallons of water dropped harmlessly into the channels between districts. Valor's uniforms remained dry. Claire watched the opposing team float past on pieces of broken bridge. That was excessive. There was mud ahead. By the time we reached the central tower, rival students no longer ran toward my Gray Academy badge. They stepped away from it. Rumors crossed the battlefield faster than teams. One claimed I had defeated 11 fighters without moving. Another said I had fired an enemy's own arrow around a tower because turning my head was inconvenient. The third claimed I had redirected a sea because I disliked puddles. The third was the most accurate. The first phase became a hunt. Opponents attacked wherever they believed I was isolated, and I sent them back without weapons. Adrian grew more irritated each time another team ignored him to reach me. By the third attack, he began intercepting them just to remind the tournament that a storm swordsman existed. At the second tower, a water mage flooded the district. Claire turned the surface into steam. Grant carried 3 teammates through the current on his shield. I cut a path between the waves and claimed the tower before the opposing captain understood that water was still shaped by mana. My resistance did not stop the flood, but it kept its magic from deciding where my body moved. Valor reached the final phase with all 5 badges. Every rival school had lost at least half its team. Wyatt had lost no one. Storm Peak Academy had ignored the early fight and surrounded the last tower with a lightning cage. 8 metal spears stood around the district, connected by blue-white arcs. Wyatt waited at the center. His teammates held the control points. The announcer called him the greatest spear prodigy of his generation. To prove it, Wyatt lifted one hand and threw a bolt through a stone tower half a mile away. The structure exploded from the inside. His supporters chanted his name while fragments rained against the barrier. Then he pointed the lightning spear at me. "Broken crystal swordsman," he said, making the temporary title sound small. "Your tricks work on academy exercises. Cross my cage, and I will show every city what rank 96 means." The other teams gathered behind us. They had stopped trying to win. They wanted to watch Wyatt erase the student who had humiliated them. Claire studied the arcs. "I can disrupt 1 spear, perhaps 2. Grant raised his shield. "I can carry us through the first layer." Adrian looked at me. "You are waiting again." Above the stadium, Wyatt's thundercloud had grown until it covered every banner. It was an excellent background. "Now," I said. I raised the broken practice sword and used the first simple upward cut battle swordsmanship had given me. Black gold light left the blade. It passed through the lightning cage, crossed the battlefield, and split the thundercloud from bottom to top. Sunlight poured through the opening and fell directly on Valor's team. The chanting ended. Wyatt tightened his grip. "A decorative attack. The tower is behind you." I didn't want to damage it. He activated the cage. Lightning filled every street. Grant moved first, shield raised, but I stepped past him. Mana resistance kept the first arc from seizing my muscles. War armor caught the heat. Killing intent perception showed where Wyatt directed the next strike. Battle swordsmanship gave me the line. I walked forward and cut once each time the lightning crossed my path. The sword did not cut electricity. It cut the metal spears carrying Wyatt's control. One fell, then another. Blue arcs bent toward me and split around my armor. Behind me, Claire placed her boots inside the path I cleared. Adrian followed without speaking. Grant brought up the rear, protecting the badges. Wyatt threw the spear. It became a solid line of lightning. The attack was powerful enough to tear through Grant's shield and everyone behind it. I could dodge. That would leave the team exposed. I caught the spear. Mana burned across my palm. War armor climbed my arm. The street behind me cracked, but the circle around Claire, Adrian, and Grant remained untouched. Wyatt pulled with both hands from across the cage, drawing the weapon and every bolt toward him. I let go. The sudden force dragged him forward. I used the storm step and appeared inside his reach before his feet returned to the ground. The broken sword touched the spearhead. One precise cut removed the blade. I turned away. Wyatt landed behind me and raised the shaft as if the fight continued. Then every remaining cage spear split. Lightning climbed harmlessly into the open sky. His weapon broke into silver pieces, and a narrow line appeared across the tower at his back. The top half of the tower slid 1 inch, stopped, and remained perfectly balanced. Wyatt dropped to one knee. His teammates lowered their badges. The rival supporters stared at the cloud I had divided. Valor's banner rose over the last tower. Claire came beside me. You waited for all 4 crystal screens to focus on you. I was checking the weather. Adrian looked at the split cloud. Next time, I am making the entrance. Of course. He heard the lie. The tournament judges presented me with the black iron key before an audience that had memorized my name. When I returned to Valor, students filled both sides of the main avenue. 2 weeks earlier, they had watched the gate open behind me. Now they climbed statues to see me pass. I was examining the vault key in the victor's chamber when Damien appeared in the reflection. He wore a white coat over silver armor with no academy crest. Dark blonde hair was tied at his neck. The air around him had the stillness of a room holding its breath. Veteran instructors outside continued talking because none of them had noticed him enter. I turned. Killing intent perception showed nothing. That worried me more than a warning. Damien smiled at the broken sword. The first battle god also preferred plain weapons. I had not said the class name aloud to anyone. Did he break as many? I asked. He broke nations. Damien's eyes moved to the mark in my palm. You are carrying a legacy that killed its last owner. I would like to prevent repetition. By hiring Cole? I hired a test. He chose to become a complication. Cole's voice came from the ceiling. That is the nicest thing anyone has said about me. Damien did not look up. He had known Cole was there. Open the vault tomorrow, he said. Bring your team, I will bring people capable of keeping them alive. And if I refuse? Silver light moved behind his eyes. For a moment, the chamber wall seemed to lean away from him. You will enter eventually. The thing beneath this academy has begun to wake. I am offering you the chance to see why. He stepped backward into the reflection and disappeared. Cole dropped from the ceiling. His grin was gone. I tried to mark his exit. My knife forgot where he was. That night, the ground beneath Valor struck upward twice. At dawn, Damien waited at the northern training grounds with 6 legendary order fighters. They carried enchanted weapons and moved with the easy confidence of people who had survived monsters that erased towns. Damien introduced me as a low-ranked keybearer. None of them recognized the tournament champion until Claire arrived with a stack of notes and corrected him. Rank 96, one fighter said. He will stay behind us. Adrian rested his hand on his sword. You should let him. The fighter mistook that for agreement. The vault door stood beneath a collapsed amphitheater. I placed the black iron key into its center. The mark in my palm burned, and the entire hillside opened like 2 stone gates. Cold ash poured out. Our objective was simple. Reach the sealed chamber, learn what was waking, and leave with anything capable of reinforcing it. Damien walked at the front. He knew the route too well for someone who claimed his earlier expedition had failed at the entrance. The first monster attacked from the ash before we reached the second chamber. It was shaped like a wolf but large enough to swallow a horse. 3 legendary order fighters struck together. Silver chains bound its legs. A spear pierced its shoulder. Magic tore open its side. The creature kept moving. I cut its front foot. The giant body slid past me and stopped with its jaws around my shoulders. The elite fighters shouted. I held the upper jaw with one hand and the lower with the other. War armor spread beneath its teeth. Then I pushed. The jaws opened. Claire burned the ash inside its throat. Adrian cut the neck. The monster dissolved. Rank 96, Cole said thoughtfully. Terrifying number. Damien glanced at the black gold armor fading from my arms. He did not look surprised. He looked disappointed that I had shown it so early. Deeper in the vault, the monsters came in packs. Routine fighting disappeared beneath ash, steel, and fire. I stayed near the back as instructed. Each time something passed the legendary fighters, it failed to reach Claire. My broken sword removed claws, horns, and wings with narrow cuts. Grant held the corridor. Adrian raced me for finishing strikes and lost by half a step often enough to stop speaking. At the gate to the relic chamber, the floor rose. A stone giant unfolded from beneath us, carrying half the vault on its back. Its head struck the ceiling. Its first movement threw the legendary fighters into the walls. Damien lifted one hand and released a silver void that erased the giant's arm from existence. The display silenced everyone. The missing arm did not fall. It simply ceased, leaving a clean emptiness where stone had been. Damien lowered his hand as though brushing dust from a sleeve. That, Claire whispered, is why no one challenges him. The giant struck with its remaining fist. Damien's order scattered. The relic chamber behind us began to collapse. If the giant fell forward, it would bury the only door. I moved beneath it and raised one armored hand. The giant's chest landed on my palm. The floor cratered around my boots. War armor darkened from black gold to almost pure gold. Stone cracked along the giant's ribs, but its weight stopped. Everyone in the corridor stared at me holding a building-sized guardian above the relic door. I looked down at my shoulder. Claire, is the coat torn? She stared. You are holding a mountain. So you can't see the shoulder? Adrian walked beneath the suspended giant and examined it. The left sleeve is damaged. Thank you. Claire made a sound of pure frustration and threw a fire lance through the guardian's head. Adrian cut both knees. I shifted my grip and tossed the collapsing body backward into the chamber we had cleared. Damien's order had forgotten to breathe. Damien himself watched the armor along my hand. Silver light circled his fingers, ready but unused. He had erased an arm. I had kept the relic chamber intact. The difference mattered to him. The fallen giant had opened 3 side passages. Ash poured from all of them. The legendary order fighters formed around Damien, expecting another monster. Instead, the walls began showing us battles. Golden figures crossed the stone in moving murals. One displayed a swordsman cutting an army. Another showed a mage standing inside a sea of fire. A third showed an assassin walking unseen between falling arrows. The vault was not decorating itself. It was testing whether the people inside understood the difference between possessing a technique and mastering it. The first legendary fighter approached the sword mural. A weapon extended from the wall. He grabbed it. The golden army moved. His new sword copied every attack shown in the carving, dragging his arm through forms too fast for his body. He struck one companion, then another. Damien opened a silver void and erased the weapon before it reached the man's throat. Do not touch anything, Damien ordered. Cole stepped from behind the assassin mural with both hands raised. That instruction arrived at an excellent time. Claire glared. What did you touch? Nothing valuable. The mural behind him released 100 golden arrows. Cole vanished. The arrows did not chase his body. They chased the intent to escape, turning at impossible angles each time he chose a new direction. He reappeared beside me with mild concern. I may have touched a decorative knife. Killing intent perception filled the corridor with cold lines. Unlike Cole, the arrows possessed only one committed purpose. I stepped between him and the mural and struck the floor with the flat of my sword. The battle standard was not yet mine, but battle swordsmanship had grown through every public fight. A black gold wave traveled through the stone and tilted each arrow's path 1 inch. 1 inch was enough. The entire storm passed around us and buried itself in the wall, forming a perfect outline of Cole's body. He looked at the empty shape. That is flattering. The fire mural activated next. Claire moved toward it before anyone could stop her. A golden version of her own inferno unfolded across the passage, larger than the spell she had used against me. She raised both hands, delighted. This vault remembers primeval fire construction, she said. Do you understand what this could teach me? The flames turned black at their edges. That old rooms are dangerous, Adrian said. Claire tried to control the mural. It took her mana and doubled the fire instead. Heat drove Damien's order backward. The stone giant shifted behind us, blocking retreat. If we let the mural continue, it would fill the relic chamber and destroy whatever waited inside. I walked through the golden fire. Mana resistance did not make the heat harmless. It allowed me to keep my direction while the spell tried to throw me away. I reached the wall, found the single glowing handprint at the mural's center, and covered it with the black gold mark in my palm. The flames divided around me. For a moment, the painted mage and I faced each other inside 2 curving walls of gold. Then the mural bowed its head and went dark. Claire stared at the ancient spell disappearing from her hands. I almost had it. It almost had the vault. I could have learned something impossible. You learned not to touch the wall, Cole nodded. An important lesson. She threw a harmless spark at his face. The sword mural activated last. Adrian had not touched it. It responded to his class. The golden swordsman stepped out of the stone wearing the same silver wing Adrian had awakened, only broader and scarred by centuries of battle. Adrian's expression changed. This was the perfected image he had chased since childhood. The mural fighter drew its blade. Adrian drew his. Their first exchange split the remaining pillar. The ancient form was faster. It drove Adrian across the chamber with the exact storm step he used, each movement refined beyond anything his instructors knew. Adrian blocked 5 strikes and took the 6th across his chest. The barrier on his uniform flashed red. I could have ended the mural with 1 attack. I waited long enough for Adrian to see the final footwork. On its 7th charge, he changed his stance. Instead of copying the golden swordsman, he used the shorter step he had seen me build from his style. Their blades crossed. Adrian cut the silver wing from the mural's back. The projection staggered. I finished it with one clean movement before the wall could rebuild the form. Gold exploded across the chamber and flowed into the path ahead. Adrian looked at his sword. You improved my technique. You provided an early draft. He should have been furious. Instead, he tested the shorter step again, then hid a smile by turning away. The three murals opened the relic gate together. Damien had watched every trial without touching a weapon. The vault rejected people who grabbed at completed power. Yet he continued looking past us toward the thing at its center. Beyond the gate stood a circular hall painted with a golden mural. The first battle god towered over kneeling warriors. In his hands was a black standard edged with gold. The real standard stood at the center of the chamber, wrapped around a plain spear. Damien walked toward it. The mural ignited. Golden force struck him in the chest and drove him back 3 steps. The legendary order fighters raised their weapons. Damien's expression remained calm, but a crack appeared in the silver plate over his heart. I approached. The force opened around me. Words appeared across the mural. Mastery cannot be taken. It answers only to victory earned. The battle standard lifted from its stand and settled into my hand. Black gold light ran from it into the broken practice sword. The fragmentary blade extended, not as metal, but as a clear golden edge. I could feel every style I had mastered inside the cloth. Adrian's speed, Claire's pressure, Cole's intent, Grant's defense. The relic created nothing. It made what I had earned louder. Behind the stand, a sealed pit pulsed with black fire. Damien moved while everyone watched me. His silver void opened above the pit. A black ember rose from the seal and disappeared into his palm. Killing intent perception still showed no warning. He did not intend to attack us. He intended something beneath us. The vault shook. A hand larger than the relic chamber pressed against the far side of the wall. Damien closed his fist around the ember. The seal cannot be repaired from here. Then put that back. This is the piece poisoning it. He smiled as the black fire crawled beneath his silver gauntlet. You should be thanking me. The mural behind me changed. It showed the first battle god facing an enormous figure made of ash. In the final image, a golden sword pinned a black heart beneath the academy. Damien had not removed poison. He had taken a piece of the heart. Before I could move, horns sounded from outside the vault. Imperial knights filled the entrance corridor in polished blue armor. Their captain stepped into the chamber and presented a sealed challenge tablet. By order of the Imperial Combat Order, he announced, the unregistered battle standard must be surrendered for evaluation. Its bearer may contest seizure through the 100-lance gauntlet. Damien examined the black ember as if the timing surprised him. It did not surprise me. He had arranged another test. This time, he wanted to see whether I could survive an army. The 100-lance gauntlet began at sunrise on the Imperial training plane. It was not a political trial or a courtroom. The combat order cared about one answer. Could the person holding a legendary weapon keep it when trained knights tried to take it? 100 knights stood between my team and the far gate. Their blue armor formed 10 perfect rows. Long lances rested at the same angle. At the end waited Captain Nathan inside a moving fortress of overlapping shields. If I reached him with the battle standard, I kept it. If I dropped the relic or lost every teammate's badge, the knights claimed it. Damien watched from a silver platform beside the field. The black ember was hidden beneath his gauntlet. He had told the order that an unstable student had stolen the standard from the vault. He expected discipline and numbers to expose the limits of my class. The stands were filled with soldiers instead of students. They had heard the tournament stories, but soldiers trusted formations more than rumors. Nathan lifted his lance. Bearer, prepare. I tied the battle standard across my back and looked at Claire, Adrian, Grant, and Cole. They each wore a badge over the heart. The knights did not have to defeat me. They only had to take those 4 targets. Stay inside my reach, I said. Adrian frowned. I do not require protection. Then stay inside my reach, while looking independent. Claire formed fire around both hands. What is the plan? I faced the 100 lances. Walk forward. The horn sounded. The first line charged. Grant met them shield first. Claire's fire bent the nearest lances upward. Adrian became a silver streak and cut through the gaps. I walked at the center, using the broken sword to remove weapon points without touching armor. Cole vanished. For 30 seconds the field looked easy. Then the formation changed. The front knights dropped to one knee. The second row ran over their shields. The third threw chains between their lances. My killing intent perception filled with cold lines coming from every direction, all aimed away from me. They struck the team. Grant blocked 3 and lost his footing. Claire's fire shield shattered under a rain of blunt spearheads. Adrian cut 5 lances, but a chain wrapped his sword arm. A hidden knight emerged behind him and reached for his badge. I used the storm step, caught the knight's gauntlet, and sent him sliding without breaking the armor. Another lance came for Claire. I intercepted it with my shoulder. War armor formed, but 2 more weapons struck my back before the plate settled. The order had no gifted individual I needed to defeat. Its talent was collective pressure. Every knight attacked the opening created by the one before. My class could not steal a formation by winning against a crowd. I did not need a new skill. I needed more from the armor I already owned. We continued forward. The knights tightened around us. Each impact made my armor darker and heavier. I protected Claire from a shield rush, caught a chain aimed at Adrian, and stood over Grant while he recovered. The cost accumulated in my ribs and knees. War armor stopped the worst of each strike, not all of it. Nathan watched from the final gate. He believed our circle would collapse before we reached him. Damien watched my armor. He wanted to know whether it would. Cole appeared beside me long enough to cut a chain. Someone replaced the blue practice seals on the last row. With what? Red combat seals. The final formation will be real. He disappeared before a lance crossed his neck. Damien had turned the evaluation lethal. If we retreated, the order took the standard and he gained time with the ember. If we advanced, Nathan's strongest attack could kill the people behind me. I kept walking. Claire saw the change in my pace. Something is wrong. The last lances are live. Adrian cut himself free of the chain. Good. That is your response? He was becoming bored. Adrian nodded at me. That is usually when property damage begins. The final 20 knights formed a ring around Nathan. Their shields linked into a blue wall. Red light gathered along every lance point. The formation rotated, each knight adding speed and mana to the next. By the time the final weapon reached Nathan, 100 lines of force had become one. The soldiers in the stands stood. This was the 100 lance charge, an attack designed to stop giant monsters at the Empire's frontier. Nathan aimed at my chest. Surrender the standard. I untied it. Damien leaned forward. I planted the relic into the ground beside me. The black cloth opened in the wind. Gold traced every edge. My existing armor answered it, spreading from my body into a thin circle over the earth. Claire, Adrian, and Grant stood inside. Cole's badge floated from nowhere and landed at my feet, also inside the line. Nathan released the charge. 100 lances moved. The first impact hit my chest. The next struck my shoulders. Then the formation became a storm of blue metal and red light. War armor rang around my body. Every blow I endured thickened the gold at the edge of the circle. Lances that tried to pass me bent toward my plates. Attacks aimed at my teammates curved away from them. The armor was no longer covering only me. It had become a shelter. Claire's fire went out. Adrian lowered his sword. Grant stared at the translucent gold surrounding his shield. For the first time since the horn, none of them needed to move. I walked forward alone. The 100 lance charge continued. Weapons struck from the front, sides, and sky. Each one bent around the untouched circle behind me. Blue spearheads piled across the ground. The soldiers stopped shouting. Nathan's fortress formation began stepping backward, even though no retreat command had been given. I reached the shield wall. Nathan drove the final accumulated strike straight at my heart. The red point tore through the outer plate of my war armor and stopped against the black uniform beneath it. I looked down at the lance. That one was better. Nathan pushed. The shaft shook in both hands. I drew the battle standard from the ground and tapped its plain spear point against his breastplate. The amplified impact passed through the linked formation. Every shield rang once. 100 knights dropped to a knee without a single plate breaking. The far gate opened. I walked through while the protective circle carried my teammates behind me. The horn announced that the standard remained mine. Nathan removed his helmet. He looked at Damien's platform, then at the red seal glowing on his lance. Understanding replaced defeat. He snapped the corrupted seal off the weapon and crushed it. Then he placed one fist over his chest. The entire combat order saluted. Damien remained seated. For one brief moment, black fire showed through the fingers of his silver gauntlet. He had learned the answer to his test. An army could not force me to abandon the people behind me. The gauntlet changed more than my armor. Before it, soldiers treated me as a rumor from an academy arena. After it, knights moved aside when I entered a training field. They called me the standard bearer. Adrian called the title excessive, mostly because no one had given him one. Claire spent 3 days testing the protective circle. She threw fire at it, around it, and once from beneath it. Every spell aimed with hostile intent curved toward my armor. Harmless magic passed through. Cole tested it by dropping a knife, while claiming he had no intention of hitting me. The knife struck his own boot. The armor has good judgment, I said. He became its strongest supporter. We returned to Valor for the Legendary Heroes exhibition, an event held once every 5 years. The Empire's most famous fighters would demonstrate their classes against Academy champions. The Grand Stadium doubled its barriers. Every student wore formal colors. Crystal screens floated above every city square. The first day was designed to remind students of the gap between talent and legend. A senior wind champion challenged a hero named Austin. The student filled the arena with razor currents and vanished among them. Austin remained seated on the preparation wall. He lifted 2 fingers when the currents reached him. Every blade of wind stopped, reversed, and hung in a circle around the student who had cast it. The match ended before Austin stood. The audience applauded for 5 full minutes. Adrian watched without blinking. "I can cut those currents." "You can try," Claire said. "You sound doubtful." "I am deciding how far back to sit." The next hero, Rachel, faced 3 Academy summoners. They produced a stone bull, a water serpent, and a winged fire beast. Rachel drew 1 iron bow and fired a single arrow into the sky. It divided into 3 black lines. Each line pinned a summon to its owner's shadow without injuring either. She walked past the trapped creatures and collected the students' badges while they continued casting. Cole leaned over the railing. "I like her. She can see you," I said. Rachel fired a 4th arrow without looking. It struck the railing 1 inch from Cole's hand. He withdrew his fingers. "I like her," respectfully. By midday, every Academy champion had lost. The legendary order grew comfortable. They began accepting unscheduled challenges to entertain the crowd. Some heroes chose Grant. Others selected Claire or Adrian. None selected me. Damien's explanation had spread faster than the truth. According to the order, my tournament wins came from an unstable relic and favorable barriers. The battle standard had been moved to a locked platform outside the arena, surrounded by Imperial Knights. The heroes believed separating me from it would reveal an ordinary student. Austin finally looked toward Valor's bench. "Broken crystal swordsman," he called. "Enter without the relic." The stadium leaned forward. Austin had defeated a wind champion without standing. He remained seated now, 1 boot on the arena wall, 2 fingers resting against his knee. Invisible currents circled the field. Dust stopped at the boundary and hung in mid-air. I entered with the broken practice sword. "You may attack whenever you are ready," he said. "Are you?" Laughter moved through the legendary section. Austin smiled. "I do not need to stand for a student." I wanted Damien's attention, and his platform overlooked the field. A clean public answer would force him to adjust. The bell rang. I did not draw the sword. Austin flicked 1 finger. An invisible wind blade crossed my throat. Killing intent perception placed a cold line against the skin. I tilted my head. The current passed and cut the barrier behind me. He used 2 fingers. Wind crossed from both sides. I stepped between the lines and continued walking. His smile faded. He raised 1 hand. The arena filled with the same circular currents that had trapped the senior champion, only denser. They stopped my sleeves, pulled at my boots, and pressed against my eyes. Mana resistance did not resist ordinary wind, but it resisted the magic commanding the current. I took another step. Austin stood. That alone drew a reaction from the legendary order. He closed both hands. Every invisible blade converged on me. War armor formed beneath my uniform. The currents struck, rang against black gold plates, and broke into visible white ribbons. I continued walking until I stood in front of him. He gathered the entire arena's wind into his palm. The pressure bent the barrier outward. Students covered their ears. This was the attack he had withheld from the first champion, strong enough to peel stone from the stadium. "Draw your weapon," he said. "You haven't earned it." Austin released the wind. I caught his wrist before the current opened. Battle swordsmanship turned the grip. Killing intent perception showed the direction, and mana resistance broke his control for 1 instant. The compressed storm fired straight upward. It punched a round hole through the clouds. I tapped his chest with 1 finger. The barrier declared the point. Austin stared at my hand, then at the sky. He had finally stood, used both hands, and lost before I drew the broken sword. The legendary section became quiet. Rachel began laughing. She applauded first. Damien said the relic was the dangerous part. From his platform, Damien watched the cloud opening close. The black ember beneath his gauntlet pulsed once. Austin returned to the hero bench without speaking. Adrian waited at the gate. "You defeated him while seated earlier," he said. "He was seated. You know what I mean. I was saving the sword." Adrian glanced toward Damien, for whom, before I answered, the exhibition announcer called Evelyn's name. Damien had arrived beneath a silver sun at the start of the exhibition. Thousands of people had risen before his boots touched the arena. He now remained on the platform reserved for the closing hero, surrounded by famous fighters and still smiling for the crystal screens. The black ember stayed hidden, but the ground beneath Valor had begun shaking every night. I needed to reach him before he left the stadium. He avoided every private corridor. Publicly challenging him without proof would only give him control of the spectacle. Then Evelyn entered the arena. She was an S-rank guardian from the legendary order, famous for a Starblade class that turned mana into enormous falling swords. Long white hair floated around her silver-red armor. She had never lost a public match. Her exhibition opponent was supposed to be Grant. Black fire pulsed beneath her breastplate. The same ember Damien had taken from the vault had left a fragment inside her. Killing intent perception filled my vision with a cold point covering the entire stadium. Evelyn raised her hand. A blade made of starlight formed above the barrier, large enough to cover the arena. Grant stepped forward with his shield. I caught his shoulder. That is not an exhibition spell. Evelyn brought the blade down. I planted the battle standard and expanded the protective field across the first rows. Grant added his shield. Claire threw fire upward. Adrian cut at the edge. Their attack slowed the star blade for 1 second. I raised my broken sword. The impact shattered both inner barriers. White light filled the stadium. Stone seats cracked beneath the crowd. My war armor spread until the plates covered my face and hands. The protective field held, but the star blade drove me waist deep into the arena floor. When the light cleared, Evelyn remained standing. Black veins crossed the silver-red armor. Her eyes had become empty gold. The announcer could not speak. Damien stood on his platform with a perfect expression of concern. The main shard of ember was no longer in his gauntlet. He had placed it inside an S-rank hero and aimed her at the largest audience in the Empire. He wanted me to fight. A golden frame formed around Evelyn. S-rank gifted opponent detected. Potential victory reward, Battle God Aura. The name appeared differently from every earlier reward. The letters were larger. Behind them, the faint golden warrior from the bell raised its head. Evelyn's attack had cracked the outer stadium. If she struck again, thousands of people would be crushed in the evacuation. I had to keep her attention, protect the audience, and defeat her before the ember finished transforming her. I pulled myself from the crater. My uniform was covered in white dust. One side of the collar had folded under the armor. I straightened it. Evelyn formed 6 star blades above me. Owen, Claire shouted from the edge, those are stronger than the first. Then the first was a poor introduction. The blades fell. I left the protective circle around the stands and moved into the open arena. The first sword struck my shoulder. War armor absorbed enough for me to remain upright. The second split the ground. I used the storm step across its surface before it exploded. The third and fourth crossed, leaving no visible path. Mana resistance kept their pressure from pinning me. Killing intent perception revealed the narrow place where Evelyn meant the edges to meet. I passed through it and cut both blades apart after they struck. The fifth came for Claire, not me. I appeared in front of her and caught it against the battle standard. Gold and white light tore a trench through the field. Claire stared over my shoulder at the weapon shaking in my hands. I had a barrier, she said. You had half a barrier. It was growing. I threw the star blade aside. It crossed the arena and pierced the sixth before that weapon could descend. Evelyn watched her own attacks destroy each other. The black veins reached her throat. She drew the star blade at her hip. Unlike the giant weapons above, this one was narrow and fast. She crossed the distance before my perception finished warning me. Her edge cut through war armor, through my sleeve, and into my shoulder. The S-rank crowd found its voice. They had never seen Evelyn move seriously. Her supporters shouted that the difference had finally appeared. She attacked again. I blocked with the broken practice sword. The remaining metal cracked. A third strike sent the sword spinning from my hand. Adrian reached for his own weapon at the barrier. I stopped him with one look. Evelyn's strength had to be experienced. The class did not reward being rescued from the final exchange. She drove me backward across the arena with 7 precise cuts. Each one opened the war armor. Each one carried black fire deeper into the wounds. My mana resistance slowed the corruption, but the ember was feeding on every spell around us. Damien had chosen her carefully. An S-rank guardian could attack the entire arena, forcing Claire and the barriers to use more mana, making Evelyn stronger. I did not need to solve the ember. I needed to defeat the person carrying it. I left the broken sword on the ground. Evelyn raised her blade. Above her, every fragment of star mana returned. It formed a radiant giant with 6 arms, each holding a weapon larger than the stadium. The sight drove the last confidence from the spectators. Even legendary fighters stepped away from the barrier. Damien smiled. I waited. Claire saw me lower my hands. You are letting her finish? She worked hard on the entrance. The giant became complete. Evelyn stood inside its chest, black fire burning where its heart should have been. 6 enormous swords pointed down. I walked toward her with no weapon. The first blade struck. I raised one armored hand. The star edge stopped against my palm and cracked from tip to hilt. The second came sideways. I ducked under it and continued walking. The third split my armor across the back. Black gold plates reformed before the pieces touched the ground. Evelyn's empty eyes narrowed. The remaining 3 blades attacked together. I planted one foot and punched upward. The air burst. All 3 weapons broke above me in a white storm. The radiant giant opened its mouth and released a beam toward the crowd. My protective field caught it, but the gold circle began collapsing. Grant reinforced the edge with his shield. Claire and Adrian stood inside, unable to reach me through the pressure. Cole appeared beside Damien's platform, one dagger ready, then stopped. Even he understood this victory had to be mine. I reached the broken practice sword and pulled it from the stone. Only a short piece of metal remained above the guard. The battle standard answered it. A clear golden blade extended from the fragment. Evelyn descended inside the 6-armed giant. Every remaining star gathered into one final sword. It filled the sky over Valor, visible from cities beyond the academy walls. The audience could not escape in time. I could shield them or attack her. My armor field had not grown enough to do both at this scale. The class message changed. To awaken the battle god aura, defeat the S rank at the height of her strength. Evelyn brought the sky down. I used the same basic downward cut that had defeated Adrian. The golden edge touched the star blade. For 1 second, nothing moved. Then the black bell beneath the academy rang. The colossal golden warrior rose behind me. This time, everyone saw it. Its head towered above the stadium. Broken armor shone like a second sunrise. It held a plain sword in both hands, matching my stance. Golden pressure rolled from its body without wind or heat. The falling star blade stopped in mid-air. Every hostile spark bent away from the stands. Gifted S-rank opponent defeated at full strength. Battle god aura awakened. The new power did not feel like a spell. It felt like every victory I had earned standing up at once. Adrian's swordsmanship sharpened. Claire's mana resistance steadied. Cole's perception widened. Grant's armor spread across the entire protected space. The battle standard amplified them into one golden presence. I completed the downward cut. The giant star blades split. The 6-armed guardian behind Evelyn opened from crown to waist in a line of black gold light. Its 2 halves passed around the stadium and dissolved into white rain beyond the walls. Evelyn landed in front of me. The ember fragment tried to flee from her chest. My aura pressed it into the golden blade and burned the black fire away. Her empty eyes cleared 1 instant before my sword stopped against her collar. The 6-armed giant vanished. Evelyn looked at the blade, then at the warrior filling the sky behind me. She released her weapon. The golden frame shattered. The stadium remained silent long after the barrier declared victory. Damien began to clap. 1 person at a time joined him until the sound became thunder. He smiled for the crystal screens as though the awakening had been his intention, then turned to leave. I pointed the golden blade at his platform. He stopped. For the first time, killing intent perception found him. A cold point touched the entire academy beneath our feet. Damien had not been watching the end of the duel. He had been waiting for the bell. The ground split. Black ash erupted beyond the stadium. One of Valor's northern towers tilted and disappeared into a widening crack. The applause became screams. Damien stepped into a silver void and vanished. He had used the exhibition to keep every powerful fighter inside one arena while he opened the seal below it. Adrian reached me first. He looked up at the fading golden warrior. His usual resentment had become something cleaner and harder. I will surpass that, he said. Good. I pulled the battle standard from the stone. But first, keep up. We ran toward the collapsing academy as an enormous hand made of ash broke through the earth. The Ash Titan's hand rose through Valor Academy, with 5 fingers spread across the sky. Each finger was a tower of burned stone. Black fire ran between the cracks. The wrist tore through the northern grounds, lifting dormitories and training halls on a wave of earth. Students fled toward the main gate while ash-born creatures crawled from the opening beneath them. The legendary fighters at the exhibition froze for one fatal moment. They had spent their lives hearing that the Titan was dead. Its hand alone was larger than the stadium. I did not have time to explain what they were seeing. I raised the battle standard. Battle god aura spread from the cloth in a golden wave, crossed the stands, and touched every hostile spark in the air. The pressure opened a clear path through the ash toward the academy. Then I cut. The black gold edge traveled over the stadium wall and through the storm. It split the falling debris above the central avenue, leaving 2 mountains of stone crashing harmlessly to either side. I used the open path as my entrance. The storm step carried me through the slash. One moment I stood inside the arena. The next, I landed on the avenue between hundreds of retreating students and the first ash-born monster. It had 6 arms and a mouth full of furnace light. It swung at the crowd. I kept walking. The golden warrior behind me repeated my earlier cut. The monster separated into clean pieces before its hand reached anyone. Its black fire bent around my uniform and dissolved. The students stopped running. That was dangerous. Main gate, I said without raising my voice. They moved immediately. A dormitory tower split above the avenue. The upper 6 floors leaned toward the fleeing students. Beds, desks, and pieces of roof slid through the open side. An instructor threw up a barrier. The first falling block passed through it like paper. The Titan's ash carried an old anti-magic weight that ordinary defenses could not hold. Claire turned in the air and built a second barrier from fire. I can slow the debris, keep the avenue clear. I used the storm step up the side of the broken tower. Each black gold footprint struck the wall and remained for an instant. I ran vertically past falling windows. A stone gargoyle the size of a carriage came down toward me. One strike divided it around my body. The two halves passed on either side and landed outside the evacuation route. At the 6th floor, 3 first-year students clung to the exposed hallway. The tower continued leaning. One wore the same gray rank badge I had received on Awakening Day. He looked at the empty space below and could not move. I cut the ceiling above them. The entire floor separated from the tower as a flat slab. War armor spread from my boots into the stone, holding it together. I planted the broken sword, used it as a handle, and lifted the floor with all 3 students still standing on it. The tower collapsed behind us. I stepped off the wall and landed in the avenue carrying a section of the 6th floor above one shoulder. Dust rolled around the golden armor. The students stared down from their furniture. The stairs were damaged, I said. The gray-badged boy slowly looked at the ruined tower. You carried the room. It was faster. I set the floor beside the evacuation line without spilling a desk. Claire flew past, saw the intact furniture, and shouted that my priorities were becoming impossible to defend. The next tremor opened a crack beneath the elemental hall. Fire spilled upward, but it was not Claire's bright orange. Black flame formed faces as it climbed. 2 instructors were trapped on the far side with a group of young mages. Claire tried to cross. The ash fire absorbed her first spell and grew larger. I landed in front of it. It feeds on mana, she warned. Then stop feeding it. That is what fire mages do. The black flames reached for the students. I walked through them. Mana resistance held their pressure away from my mind, but the heat cut beneath my war armor. The Titan wanted every spell and every living fighter to become fuel. My aura forced the hostile mana outward, creating a narrow tunnel through the blaze. I held one hand toward the trapped group. Walk. No one moved. From their side, I was only a silhouette inside a wall of black fire. The gray-badged boy I had carried from the tower ran to the edge behind me. That's Owen, he shouted. The fire moves for him. The students crossed. Each one entered the golden path and came through untouched. The instructors followed last. When the final boot left the hall, I closed my hand. Battle God aura compressed the black fire into a sphere no larger than an apple. Claire stared at it floating over my palm. Do not throw that. An ash-born monster climbed over the far wall and opened its furnace mouth. I threw the sphere. The creature vanished inside a silent black flash. Its empty armor fell into a neat pile. Claire looked at the smoking wall. I specifically asked you not to. There was a target. You would have found one. She was correct. At the southern courtyard, 2 legendary fighters had been pinned by an ash copy of a hammer hero. The copy swung a weapon that sent shockwaves through the ground. Every impact knocked rescuers from their feet. One famous hero crawled backward, staring at the face of someone he had studied since childhood. I stepped into the next shockwave. War armor caught the force and thickened. My boots remained still. The ash copy raised its hammer again, expecting another field-wide impact. I placed one hand against the hammerhead before it fell. The copy pushed. Black stone cracked beneath us. Its empty face tilted, unable to understand why the smallest fighter in the courtyard had stopped its defining attack. I squeezed. The hammer collapsed into ash between my fingers. The copy looked at its empty hands. I tapped its chest with the broken sword. A gold line passed through the armor. The entire body blew backward while the 2 pinned heroes remained untouched at my feet. Nian Owen-san. One of them stared up. We were told your relic made you strong. I had left the battle standard with Grant at the evacuation line. Then it is having a very productive day from across the academy. He saw the empty loop on my back and stopped asking questions. Each rescue changed the movement around Valor. At first, instructors directed students away from the Titan. Then they began directing them toward the golden paths I opened. Knights repositioned when they saw my armor rise above a roof. Legendary fighters who had arrived expecting to command began waiting for the direction of my next cut. No title had given me control. The battlefield had. Instructors who had ignored my questions about the bell now waited for orders. Imperial Knights formed lines along the avenue. Legendary fighters abandoned the stadium and followed my path through the ash. No one asked about rank 96. No one mentioned class. None. When I pointed toward the dormitories, Grant took the eastern wing. When I pointed toward the gate, Nathan moved the order. The Academy had spent months deciding what I was. The Titan decided in seconds. Claire landed beside me on a platform of fire. Adrian arrived as a silver streak. Cole stepped from the shadow of my standard. Damien went below, Cole said. He is carrying the main ember. Can you follow? The seal is producing too much killing intent. It feels like standing inside a knife. The Titan's hand lowered. Its shadow covered the Academy. The palm opened above the main gate, where the largest group of students and knights had gathered. If it struck, Valor would become a crater. Claire stared upward. That is not a spell I can burn. Adrian drew his sword. Then we cut it. The students are beneath it, Grant called from the eastern roof. Any fragment will crush them. I planted the standard at the center of the avenue. Battle God aura expanded. Gold rolled over the Academy roofs, down the broken walls, and around every person who was not trying to kill. The protective field had covered 4 teammates in the gauntlet, and thousands of spectators in the stadium. Now I pushed it across every inch of valor. The pressure felt like lifting the Academy with my ribs. War armor formed over my entire body and spread into a translucent dome. Cracks appeared along the plates before the Titan even struck. The palm descended. Claire flew into the sky and filled the gaps around the fingers with fire, outlining them for me. Adrian raced along the rooftops and cut falling chains of stone before they crossed the field. Cole stood beside the standard with his eyes closed, calling the exact instant each Ashborn creature committed to an attack. Grant and Nathan held the gates. I raised one hand. The Titan's palm hit the dome. Every window in Valor burst outward. The northern towers sank. The plain around the Academy split in a circle. Outside my aura, trees flattened beneath the pressure. Inside it, students felt only a warm wind. My boots went through the avenue to my knees. The Titan pushed. I pushed back. Black fire poured around the dome and turned the afternoon into night. My armor broke across the shoulders, reformed, and broke again. The giant hand had no skill to master. It was weight, hunger, and the accumulated force of something that had slept beneath generations. I had spent every victory learning how not to be moved. Gold brightened around my palm. The dome rose 1 foot. The hand stopped. Across the grounds, retreating fighters looked back. They saw the enormous black palm resting on a sphere of gold. At its center, I stood with one arm raised. I drew the broken practice sword with the other hand. The battle standard gave the fragment its golden edge. I could destroy the hand. The falling pieces would still crush the surrounding city. The aura could protect Valor or amplify the cut, not both at full strength. So I used precision. Killing intent perception showed where the Titan's hunger traveled through the stone. Mana resistance kept the black fire from entering my body. Battle swordsmanship found one line between every student, roof, and street. I turned the blade sideways and made a horizontal cut no wider than the wrist. The golden warrior behind me swung. The Titan's hand separated from its arm. For a breath, it remained balanced on the dome. Then the cut pieces divided again, not randomly, but into long black slabs that slid down the outside of the golden protection. They struck empty ground around Valor and formed a ring of smoking stone. Not one piece fell inside. The severed wrist withdrew into the earth. A roar came from below, deep enough to shake clouds apart. My aura flickered. Claire landed beside the standard and caught it before it fell. You protected the entire Academy and controlled every fragment. The eastern garden may be shorter. She looked beyond the dome. A row of decorative trees had been shaved flat at exactly the same height. You are worried about the garden? It was repetitive. Adrian arrived with ash covering half his coat. He looked from the stone ring to my sword. You could have cut that cleanly during the tournament. The audience was smaller. He closed his eyes for a moment. I knew it. The Academy had survived the first strike, but the seal continued opening. The ground beneath the northern grounds collapsed into a red-black pit. From it rose Ashborn figures wearing the shapes of dead heroes. Some carried axes, some spears, some enormous magic staves. They were not true people. The Titan had memorized the fighters buried with it and turned their strength into guards. The legendary order attacked. Silver, blue, and white techniques filled the broken campus. One ash hero met 3 living heroes and drove them backward. Another released a wave that tore the roof from the senior hall. The Titan's army grew with each pulse from below. An ash archer climbed the severed Titan finger outside the western wall. It planted 1 foot above the Academy and drew a bow made from black ribs. The arrow on its string pointed at the main gate. Killing intent perception showed a cold line crossing every person in the evacuation route. Cole, I said. He appeared on the avenue lamp beside me. I see it. Move the last group left. The attack covers the gate. Move them left anyway. Cole looked at the ash archer, then at my sword. His grin returned. He dropped into the crowd and began shifting students. He did not explain why. He stole 3 bags, threw them down the left path, and let their owners chase him. Others followed the movement without understanding. The archer released. The black arrow grew as it crossed the campus. By the time it reached the gate, it was wide enough to cover the avenue. I used the storm step toward it. Claire shouted my name. From her angle, I had abandoned the protective field and jumped directly into the projectile. I struck the arrow point with the broken sword. The impact pushed me back through the air. War armor formed. The arrow continued carrying me toward the crowd. I turned the blade 1 degree left. That was why Cole had moved them. The arrow passed through the empty right side of the gate, missing the last student by a foot. I kept one hand against its point, rode it beyond the academy wall, and forced it downward into the abandoned tournament landing field. Black fire exploded. The field vanished inside a crater. Before the ash settled, I used the arrow shaft as a ramp and ran back toward its owner. The archer reached for a second shot. I appeared on the tightened finger in front of it. My blade cut the bowstring. The released force snapped backward through the ash hero and sent its empty armor tumbling from the hand. I turned away before it landed. The creature broke apart against the crater behind me at the exact moment the evacuation crossed the gate. Cole stood on the wall holding all 3 stolen bags. I helped. The owners took them back and thanked him despite themselves. On the eastern grounds, Adrian met an ash swordsman carrying a blade twice his height. The dead style used no speed. It swung once, and the silver wind around Adrian vanished. The second swing broke his repaired sword at the dark band. He stood with half a weapon, looking uncomfortably familiar. The ash swordsman raised its giant blade for a third strike. Adrian glanced across the battlefield and found me watching. "Do not say it," he called. "Your weapon has never lost. It lost to you. That was the other half." He almost laughed. The giant blade fell. Adrian used the shorter storm step he had learned in the vault. He moved inside the weapon instead of racing away. His broken sword cut the ash hero's hands. The enormous blade continued downward, but I sent one narrow golden strike across the campus. It met the falling edge above Adrian's head and split it. He completed his own cut through the ash swordsman's chest. The 2 halves fell to either side of him. "I did not need the assistance," he said. "I was protecting the ground." He looked at the canyon the weapon would have carved and decided not to answer. The strongest ash hero emerged near the central tower. It wore a crown of horns and carried no weapon. Each time a legendary fighter attacked, it caught the technique in one hand and threw it back larger. Rachel's black arrow became a rain of spears. Austin's wind returned as a white tornado. Evelyn, barely recovered, formed a small star blade. The ash hero caught that too and lifted it above the student shelters. Damien had found a guardian that punished spectacle with greater spectacle. The legendary fighters hesitated. I walked toward it without raising my sword. The crowned figure threw Evelyn's star blade. Battle god Aura bent the weapon away from the shelters and into my open hand. I caught the magic, closed my fingers, and let mana resistance break its command. The star blade dissolved. The ash hero extended one palm, waiting to copy my next technique. I struck it with the guard of the broken sword. No light appeared. No named style formed. It was a basic hit to the center of its chest. The crown flew off. The ash hero crossed the courtyard, broke through the central tower, and landed outside the academy. Every legendary fighter stared. The creature rose and held out its palm again, confused. There had been no technique to catch. I crossed the distance before it recovered, and used the same basic strike a second time. The body passed through the academy wall, through the ring of severed titanstone, and disappeared into the distant woods. 3 seconds later, a black cloud rose on the horizon. Austin looked at his hands. "We gave it too much power." "You gave it something complicated," I said. Claire landed nearby, "and you solved it by hitting it twice." The first hit was diagnostic. "You enjoyed saying that." I had. The invasion continued, but the legendary order stopped trying to outshine the ash heroes. They began clearing paths and guarding students. The biggest opponents looked toward me instead. I could not remain at the center holding the dome forever. Damien was beneath the seal. If he reached the heart, he would control the next strike. If I left too early, the students became targets again. "Grant," I called. He crossed the avenue and planted his shield beside the standard. "Hold the field. I cannot produce your armor. You don't need to. The standard remembers what I've mastered. Keep it standing." Grant wrapped both hands around the relic. My protective field shrank from the entire academy to the central evacuation route, but it remained. Claire placed a ring of fire outside it. Nathan formed the knights within. Together they could hold long enough for me to reach the pit. Adrian stepped beside me. "I am coming. The eastern line needs a swordsman. It has 20. It needs one who believes he is better than all 20. His mouth almost lifted. I had learned how to aim him too. "Return before I finish," he said. Cole had already disappeared toward the pit. Claire caught my sleeve. Her usual sarcasm had vanished beneath the ash. If Damien has the heart, do you know what your aura will do against it? No. That is the first honest answer you have given me. I honestly dislike the new coat. Better. Fire gathered around her. Go. I ran north. The ash heroes converged. A dead axe champion brought down a weapon wide enough to split the avenue. I passed beneath it and cut the handle. A staff released black lightning. Mana resistance opened a path through it. 3 spear figures attacked from behind. Killing intent perception placed their points in my mind, and my broken sword struck each without turning. I did not stop to finish them. Claire's fire and Adrian's silver wind arrived behind me. The ash forms shattered under the combined attacks. The pit widened as I approached. Cole waited at the edge, holding a dagger covered in black frost. Damien erased the stairs, he said. Below us, Silver Void had carved a vertical tunnel into the glowing seal chamber. The drop disappeared into darkness. Did you find another route? Yes, Cole pointed down. Gravity. I stepped off the edge. He laughed and followed. We fell through layers of buried academy stone. Old training halls flashed past. The black bell hung in a cavern to our left, ringing without being struck. Beneath it, golden carvings burned across the Titan's chains. Cole threw a wire into the wall and slowed. I continued. War armor covered me one breath before I hit the sealed chamber floor. The impact sent a black gold ring through the cavern. Ash flew away from me. Cole landed lightly on a wire and looked offended by how much better my entrance had been. Damien stood at the center of the chamber. The Ash Titan's heart floated before him, a black sphere crossed by glowing cracks. It was larger than the vault mural had shown, almost 20 feet across. Chains of gold still held it, but Damien's silver void had erased most of their links. He pressed the ember into the final crack. The heart opened. Black fire wrapped around his arm. Silver armor became dark at the edges. The force drove Cole against the wall and cracked my war armor from across the chamber. Damien looked over his shoulder. You arrived sooner than the first battle god did. He had a longer fall. He had an army. Above us, the academy shook again. Damien closed both hands around the heart. The sphere compressed, pouring ash and black fire into his armor. A giant outline formed behind him, not golden, but empty gray. I attacked before the transformation finished. The broken sword crossed his neck. Silver void opened between blade and skin. My golden edge disappeared into it and emerged from another opening across the chamber. Damien struck my chest with one palm. The same void swallowed the distance. His hand seemed to touch lightly, yet the impact threw me through 3 pillars. Cole appeared at Damien's back, his dagger aimed beneath the helmet. Damien caught him without looking. You were paid to take the shard, he said. I became distracted. Damien threw him toward the opening above. I expanded the protective field and caught Cole in gold before he struck the wall. That moment cost me. Black fire hit from below, lifting me into the air. Damien raised the half-absorbed heart and drove it into his chest. The Titan roared through him. Ash armor expanded across his body. 6 silver voids opened like a halo behind his head. In each one appeared the weapon of a legendary hero, Starblade, giant spear, black axe, chained bow, white staff, and empty hand. He had not merely stolen the Titan's strength. The heart contained the fighting memories of every legend it had consumed. A golden frame formed around him, so bright it filled the chamber. Gifted opponent detected. Ash hero. Classification beyond S rank. Potential growth unknown. Damien examined the new armor. Satisfaction finally broke through his calm expression. Your class collects mastery 1 victory at a time. I have collected every hero at once. He opened all 6 voids. The chamber vanished beneath legendary attacks. I raised the protective field over Cole and myself. The first Starblade drove us into the floor. A spear pierced the outer gold. The axe split 3 armor plates. White lightning crossed through every crack. I cut the chained arrow, resisted the magic, sensed the killing lines, and endured the force. The final empty hand touched my chest. Silver void bloomed inside the armor. I flew upward through the entire tunnel and broke out of the pit into the academy sky. Damien rose after me on a column of ash. Every battle across Valor stopped. He hovered above the severed grounds wearing the Titan heart as a black sun behind him. The Ash heroes knelt. Legendary fighters lowered their weapons. Even Evelyn, weakened at the stadium edge, went pale when she saw what he had become. Damien spread his arms. The Titan's remaining body moved beneath the academy, lifting miles of earth. The horizon darkened as shoulders the size of mountains began rising beyond the walls. The first battle god sealed this power because he feared it, Damien said. His voice reached every crystal screen still operating. I will use it. He looked down at me standing in the crater where I had landed. Owen, Show them whether an unfinished class can defeat every completed legend. He wanted the final duel here, before the greatest possible audience. That part, at least, we agreed on. I stood and brushed ash from the half of my coat that remained. Adrian appeared on the crater rim, bleeding from one temple. Claire landed beside him. Grant carried the battle standard from the evacuation line. Nathan and the combat order filled the avenue. Students crowded every protected rooftop. Rival school airships approached over the city. The entire empire watched through cracked crystal screens. Damien had waited until he possessed the most dramatic entrance in history. I held out one hand. Grant threw me the battle standard. The instant I caught it, the black bell rang again. Golden light erupted from the pit beneath my feet. It rose around me in a pillar, tore a second opening through the ash clouds, and formed the colossal warrior across the entire sky. Damien's black sun became a shadow against it. Claire looked from my entrance to his. You delayed that on purpose. The standard was far away. Grant was 10 feet behind you. I faced Damien and rested the broken practice sword against my shoulder. The legendary hero's smile disappeared. My entrance had been better. He lifted the Titan heart and opened a gate in the sky. Beyond it waited a red plain filled with the weapons of dead champions. The first battlefield, the place where the original battle god had fought the Titan, descended over the academy like another world. Damien stepped through. Come claim your legacy. I walked after him. The first battlefield had no sky. Red light hung above an endless plain of black sand. Swords, spears, staffs, and broken shields covered the ground. Each weapon belonged to someone the Ash Titan had defeated. At the horizon, the Titan's full body stood with chains hanging from its arms. It was so large that distance made it look like a mountain range wearing armor. The gate remained open behind me. Through it, Valor Academy watched. Claire, Adrian, Cole, Grant, Nathan, the legendary order, rival schools, and every active crystal screen had a clear view of the plain. Damien waited between 6 silver voids. The Titan heart burned inside his chest. Ash armor covered him from throat to heel, polished now, shaped like the armor of a conquering hero. He had spent years preparing to stand in this exact place. I still wore a torn academy uniform. He looked at the broken practice sword in my hand. You continue carrying that fragment because people recognize it. Finally, someone understands. They recognize weakness made entertaining. He drew a long black blade from the first void. I will give them something greater to remember. The weapon belonged to a legendary swordsman the Titan had consumed centuries ago. Damien crossed the plain in one step. Our blades met. The impact split the sand to both horizons. My golden edge held for half a second before the ancient black sword cut through it and struck my shoulder. War armor broke. I turned with the force, used Adrian's storm step and cut Damien across the side. Silver void swallowed my blade. The cut emerged behind me. Killing intent perception warned me. I bent beneath my own golden edge and attacked his legs. Damien opened another void. A white staff appeared and released a wave of cold mana across the ground. Mana resistance kept me moving, but ice climbed my boots. His spear arrived next. Its point carried the accumulated strength of 100 legendary charges. I caught it on the battle standard and slid a mile across the sand. Damien did not follow immediately. He wanted the audience to understand the difference. Each weapon in his halo represented a completed legend. He raised them one after another, letting the battlefield project the fighters who had once carried them. A giant archer drew the chained bow. A star guardian lifted 6 radiant swords. An axe champion grew from ash. A silent martial hero stood behind the empty hand. The legendary order watching through the gate recognized their oldest techniques. Some dropped to a knee. Damien had become the history they worshipped. Then every projection attacked. I planted the battle standard. Battle god aura spread around me, not across the whole battlefield, but along one narrow golden path back to the gate. The star swords fell. I split 2 and let war armor absorb the third. The chained arrow circled behind me. Killing intent perception showed its return, and I caught the chain around my forearm. The axe arrived from above. I pulled the chain, dragged the arrow into its path, and both legendary weapons shattered together. The white staff froze the fragments in mid-air. Damien's spear struck through them. I crossed the broken practice sword and standard. The spear drove me backward, boots cutting trenches through the black sand, armor folded against my chest. The force pushed all the way to the golden path behind me and stopped at its edge. Damien leaned into the weapon. You are still protecting spectators who are not even inside this world. They can see me. That matters to you, more than your speech. I turned the standard. The amplified motion lifted his spear. My broken sword struck his breastplate once. A thin golden line appeared across the ash armor. Damien looked down. The audience behind the gate erupted. It was the first mark anyone had placed on him since he absorbed the heart. More importantly, he heard the reaction. His calm expression tightened. Damien abandoned the borrowed sword and opened the void containing the chained bow. A black arrow formed between his fingers, already pointed at the gate behind me. "You keep leaving them a path," he said. "That makes your direction predictable." He released. The chain did not fly straight. It disappeared into one silver opening, emerged from another above the gate, then divided into a cage of hooked arrows. Every point aimed at a different witness. My perception filled with more cold lines than I could intercept individually. I planted the standard and pulled the golden path upward. It became a wall for one heartbeat. The arrow cage struck. Hooks buried themselves in the gold. Chains wrapped the protection and dragged the entire gate toward Damien. Valor's broken skyline moved closer across the red plain. He was not trying to kill the audience yet. He wanted to bring them onto the battlefield where the Titan could consume their classes. Grant understood first. He stepped through the gate, planted his shield on the Valor side, and pulled against the chains. Nathan joined him. Then the Imperial Knights locked their shields behind both men. Adrian wrapped silver wind around the gate frame. Claire burned the hooks that reached the stone. Cole ran along the chains and cut the smallest links before the void could hide them. They stopped the gate from moving. Damien frowned. "You told them to stay outside." "They are bad listeners." "Then I will remove the choice." He drew the legendary axe from its void and struck the ground. A canyon raced toward the gate. Red-black sand opened beneath the golden path. Grant's formation could resist the pull, but not if the ground disappeared. I ran along the splitting edge. Each storm step carried me ahead of the crack. At the final instant, I drove the standard through both sides of the canyon. Battle God Aura turned the black cloth into a golden bridge. The opening passed beneath it and continued around the gate in two branches. Valor remained on one island of untouched earth. Damien arrived above me with the axe already raised. I blocked using the standard's shaft. The relic bent. The force dropped both of us into the canyon. We fell between walls filled with buried weapons. Damien tore a giant spear from the stone and attacked. I caught the first thrust, turned the second, and let the third scrape my armor so I could step close. My broken sword cut across his helmet. He opened a void over the wound. The golden edge disappeared and returned from the canyon wall at my back. I expected that now. I twisted, let my redirected cut pass beneath one arm, and used its light to sever the chain on his bow. Hundreds of hooks above lost their pull. Grant and the knights dragged the gate back into place. Damien saw the movement over my shoulder. "You are using my voids. You keep putting them in useful places." He struck with the spear shaft. I caught it. We hit the canyon floor together. Buried weapons rose around us as the Titan heart pulsed. Ghostly owners appeared behind each one. Dead champions reached toward Damien, offering every style they had lost. He selected a pair of short blades and moved faster than Adrian's storm step. The first cut opened my cheek. The second crossed my ribs. The third came from a void beneath my own feet. War armor stopped the steel, but each strike left silver emptiness that prevented the plate from reforming. Damien finally had a sequence capable of wearing down my defense. He circled me through openings in space, never attacking twice from the same direction. The audience above saw black flashes and pieces of my gold armor hitting the sand. He appeared in front of me and drove both blades through my shoulders. "One lifetime cannot master every battlefield," he said. I dropped the sword. His eyes went to it. That was why I dropped it. I caught both of his wrists, lifted him, and drove him into the canyon floor. Battle swordsmanship had begun with a blade, but Grant's victory had taught my entire body how combat balance worked. Damien opened a void beneath himself to escape. I held on and entered with him. We emerged above the gate. Claire saw us first. She released a firestorm around my armor. Damien expected me to resist it. Instead, I let the flames cover both of us. Mana resistance kept my grip steady while heat entered every crack in his ash plates. Adrian's silver cut arrived through the fire. I tilted Damien into its path. The strike opened his breastplate but stopped short of the Titan heart. Cole's dagger followed, not aimed at flesh, but at the silver void forming beside his hand. Killing intent reached the opening one beat before the spell. The dagger disrupted it. Damien looked from Claire to Adrian to Cole. "You require their attacks now?" "No." I released his wrists. Grant's shield hit him from behind. The legendary hero flew through the gate and back onto the first battlefield. I followed before anyone else could enter. My team had created one opening, and I had used it. They remained behind the protected line where they belonged. Damien rose from a crater. 4 marks now crossed his armor, each left by a different person he had dismissed as one of my attachments. Black fire repaired the damage, but it could not repair his expression. "They make you slower," he said. "You aimed at them because you couldn't stop me." The Titan heart pulsed harder. He had spent years presenting every action as calm design. The audience had now seen him dragged through his own void, struck by Academy students, and thrown by the knight formation he tried to corrupt. He looked toward the gate and raised one hand. I stepped between them. Damien smiled again, but nothing calm remained in it. Predictable. Silver emptiness opened beneath my feet. He opened a void beneath my feet. I fell through and emerged high above the battlefield. The Titan's giant face filled the horizon. Damien appeared over me with all 6 weapons merged into one silver-black blade. He swung. I expanded war armor around my body before the impact. The blow launched me into the Titan's chest. Black stone burst across miles. I sank through the outer armor and hit the burning chain beneath it. The Titan moved. One mountain-sized hand closed around me. Through the gate, Valor became silent. Damien landed on the Titan's thumb. The original battle god required an army to bind this creature. You have 4 talented students and a broken sword. The Titan squeezed. War armor shattered. Black fire pressed through my mana resistance. Every killing intent stored in the Titan's body screamed at once. Too many cold points to separate. For the first time since my awakening, each mastered ability reached its visible limit together. Damien lifted the merged weapon. Your class was never legendary because it made one person strong. It was legendary because the Empire needed a symbol. Symbols break. He drove the blade through the Titan's fingers and into my chest. Golden light went out. The gate showed only a giant closed fist, and Damien standing above it. His supporters in the legendary order began to cheer. The sound was uncertain at first, then louder. Damien turned toward the audience and raised the silver-black weapon. He allowed himself one smile. Inside the Titan's hand, the blade had pierced my coat, broken the last outer plate, and stopped against the black gold mark over my heart. It hurt. It did not defeat me. The Battle God class had never promised that winning would become painless. It promised that every genuine victory would remain mine. Adrian's speed had not disappeared because Damien owned an older swordsman. Claire's resistance had not vanished because the Titan held stronger magic. Cole's perception did not need to count every threat. It only needed to find Damien. Grant's armor had already learned how to grow under force. And Damien had finally given me the defining strength of the Ash hero at full power. My class framed him through the Titan's fingers. Gifted opponents complete legacy experienced. Victory still required. I wrapped one hand around the weapon in my chest. Damien felt it move. His smile faded. Black gold armor formed beneath the Titan's fingers, not as plates over my body, but as the outline of the colossal golden warrior. Its hand opened inside the Titan's hand. The mountain-sized fingers separated. Light returned through every gap. Damien pulled at his sword. I held it with one hand and stepped out of the wound in the Titan's palm. The torn coat settled around armor brighter than the red sky. Behind the gate, no one made a sound. I looked at the blade through my chest, then at Damien. You waited too long before celebrating. I broke his merged weapon. The sound crossed the entire first battlefield. Every projection in his 6 voids cracked. The legendary weapons fell into the sand as ordinary rusted relics. Damien jumped back. For the first time, killing intent poured from him without control. The cold point in my perception became perfectly clear. I used the storm step. He opened 3 voids to redirect me. Mana resistance ignored the pressure at their edges. I passed between them, appeared at his side, and struck with the empty guard of my broken sword. The battle standard amplified the simple motion. Damien flew across the Titan's arm and hit the shoulder hard enough to split the ash armor. He rose immediately. The heart repaired the crack. Black fire expanded around him, feeding from the battlefield. He no longer looked elegant. Ash had entered his hair. Silver light flashed unevenly across his face. One exchange changes nothing, he said. It changed the audience. Through the gate, Adrian had drawn his sword and held it upright. Claire raised a flame beside him. Grant planted his shield. Cole balanced a dagger on one finger. Then the Imperial Knights lifted their lances. Rival students raised broken tournament weapons. The legendary fighters who had knelt stood again. They were not giving me power. I did not need it. They were showing Damien which legend they had chosen to watch. His anger shook the battlefield. The Titan tore free of its remaining chains. 2 arms rose from the horizon. The red light darkened. Damien lifted the heart from his chest and held it above his head. Black fire poured into the giant body, repairing every crack I had made. The Titan became solid from horizon to horizon. The gate behind me began collapsing under its weight. Claire shouted from the other side, but the roar swallowed her words. If the gate closed with the Titan awake, the first battlefield would expand into valor. Every living fighter watching would become another weapon inside the heart. My objective had never changed. Defeat Damien, reclaim the heart, close the battlefield. He had made himself the Titan's core. Destroying him with raw power would destroy the heart and release everything it contained. I needed one cut precise enough to separate them. Damien believed I had lost my sword. He pointed at the tiny fragment above my guard. You cannot reach me with that. I looked at the weapon that had begun as academy trash. The first crack had caught Adrian's perfect blade. Claire's fire had heated it. Cole had knocked it from my hand. Grant's lance had broken it. Wyatt's lightning had run across it. Evelyn's starblade had reduced it to a fragment. It had experienced every victory beside me. The battle standard could amplify anything I had truly mastered. I wrapped the black cloth around the broken guard. The relic did not create a new blade. It amplified the old one. A golden edge extended from the fragment, crossed the Titan's arm, and continued until its point reached the red horizon. It remained perfectly plain. No teeth, no runes, no elaborate shape. Just the first sword form made large enough for everyone to see. Adrian stared through the gate. He recognized the stance. It was the same downward cut I had used against him on Awakening Day. Damien recognized it too. Contempt returned to his face. A beginner's strike. It keeps working. He raised both hands. The Ash Titan copied him. Every weapon buried in the battlefield lifted into the air. Millions of swords and spears filled the red light. The 6 legendary projections reformed at scales larger than cities. Star blades covered the gate. The white staff froze the sky. Chained arrows circled the world. The spear gathered the force of every charge. The axe opened a black canyon beneath my feet. Damien's silver void wrapped all of it together. His ultimate attack filled the first battlefield. There was no place to dodge. No barrier could cover the gate against every direction. No complicated answer would improve the moment. I placed the golden sword on my shoulder and walked forward. Battle God aura expanded one step at a time. The first falling weapons reached it and turned aside. They did not stop. They split around the narrow golden path beneath my boots. Millions of blades became 2 storms passing on either side. Starfire struck and opened around my body, carving glowing trenches like Claire's first firestorm. Black ice covered the plain, leaving one strip of untouched sand where I walked. Damien pushed more power into the attack. The chained arrows wrapped around the golden warrior. War armor appeared over its giant form. The arrows tightened, the armor held, the legendary spear struck its chest. I felt the impact in every bone and continued walking. Behind me, the gate remained inside the protected path. Damien's confidence changed into disbelief. He had collected every style as a weapon. He had never endured Claire's fire to earn resistance. He had never stood on one footprint against Grant. He had never closed his eyes against Cole. He had never taken Adrian's attack 13 times and learned why it worked. The Titan gave him memories of mastery without the victories that made those memories his. My class had made me earn everything the painful way. Now none of it could be taken. The world-filling attack parted around me. I reached Damien. He stepped backward for the first time since entering the battlefield. The Titan behind him raised its empty hand as a shield. My golden warrior raised its sword. Damien released Silver Void directly against my face. The opening tried to erase the space between us. Mana resistance bent its edge. I placed one armored hand inside and pulled. The void tore apart like cloth. He attacked with the black heart itself. Killing intent perception found the single point where Damien's will entered it. Battle swordsmanship showed the line separating his borrowed power from the Titan. War armor protected the gate. Battle God aura forced every hostile spark away from the heart's sleeping memories. I swung the beginner's cut. The colossal golden warrior moved with me. Its plain sword crossed the Titan from shoulder to waist. My smaller edge passed through Damien's ash armor, through the black fire, and stopped against the heart without cutting its surface. For one breath, the two giants stood facing each other. Then a golden line appeared between Damien and the heart. The Ash Titan split along the same line. Black fire poured outward and curved around the gate. Damien's 6 voids broke. The legendary projections lowered their weapons and dissolved into quiet sparks. The heart left his chest. I caught it in one hand. Without the borrowed power, Damien fell from the Titan's shoulder. His silver armor returned in broken pieces. I let him drop until he was level with the battlefield, then caught his coat with the end of the standard. He hung above the sand, staring at the heart in my hand. "That class should have been mine," he said. "You skipped the entrance exam." I lowered him. The golden frame around his body shattered. Gifted opponent defeated. Battle God class evolved. The message did not list a new technique. I did not need one. Every mastered ability brightened until the first battlefield looked like dawn. The Ash Titan's giant body collapsed toward the gate. I raised the heart. Golden chains emerged from the black gold mark in my palm, crossed the plain, and wrapped around the Titan. The bell beneath Valor rang through both worlds. Each note pulled the creature downward. The body broke into harmless ash before it reached the opening. The weapons across the battlefield settled into the sand. I planted the heart where Damien had stood and drove the broken practice sword into the ground before it. The golden edge became a seal. The black sphere closed, its fire dimming from a storm to a quiet ember. The first battlefield began to fold. Damien sat in the sand, too exhausted to stand. He watched the legacy choose my broken weapon as its lock. Defeat upset him more than pain ever could. I left him alive because carrying the memory suited him better than disappearing into the heart. Cole stepped through the shrinking gate and placed a hand on Damien's shoulder. I believe you still owe me half a payment. Damien looked at him with pure disbelief. Cole smiled. I am flexible about interest. Claire entered next, followed by Adrian and Grant. The gate was collapsing around them. You were supposed to stay outside, I said. Claire looked at the sealed Titan, the divided battlefield, and the horizon-length golden sword fading from my hand. We came to verify whether you damaged the coat. Adrian inspected my torn sleeves. Completely. Disappointing. Grant lifted Damien over one shoulder. The former legendary hero objected until Grant reminded him that the alternative was being left inside a collapsing world. We crossed the gate as the first battlefield closed behind us. Valor Academy reappeared beneath a clear evening sky. The severed grounds were ruined. Black stone surrounded the walls. Half the towers leaned at unsafe angles, yet every student stood inside the golden protection. The Titan's ash fell like soft snow and vanished before touching the roofs. For several seconds, the entire empire waited. Then the ranking board above Valor lit by itself. My name moved from 96 to 1. The old temporary title disappeared. New gold letters formed beneath it. Battle God. This time, everyone could see the class. The replacement crystal from Awakening Day had not yet been installed, but the broken pedestal in the central stadium lit from within. Gold traveled through every crack the old crystal had left in the floor. For a moment, the original public message appeared again above the academy. Class, none. Students stared at it. Then the black letters split down the middle. The colossal warrior rose through them, and the true class replaced the insult in gold. The gray-badged first year I had carried from the dormitory climbed onto a piece of wall and pointed at the display. He had ash in his hair and one shoe missing. His cheer started before anyone else's. The sound spread across the lowest-ranked students first. They struck gray badges against broken seats. Senior champions joined. Then the rival schools answered from their airships, not because Valor had won a tournament, but because they had watched the same supposedly weak student cut a world-filling attack apart. Nathan removed the corrupted red seal from his lance and set it beneath the ranking board. Grant placed the fragments of his strongest shield beside it. Evelyn added a piece of her broken star blade. None were offerings to an untouchable relic. They were reminders of the attacks that had failed to move me. I considered the small pile. The sword needs a new sheath. Claire looked at the legendary fragments. Those are priceless combat artifacts. Then it should be a good sheath. She opened her mouth, reconsidered the day, and decided this was not the most unreasonable thing I had done. The roar from the academy reached the distant airships. Imperial knights struck their lances against the ground. Rival students shouted my name. Legendary fighters bowed their heads. Claire covered one ear and blamed me for the volume. Cole asked 3 knights whether titles came with prize money. Adrian stood beside the ranking board, looking at his own name far below mine. I will defeat you, he said. Take your time. You used my storm step against the Titan. A cleaner version. Silver wind burst around him. Claire caught his sleeve before he challenged me in the middle of the ruined avenue. The academy no longer has an arena, she said. I looked at the ring of black stone where the northern grounds had been. One controlled cut divided it into perfect seats around a flat central circle. It does now. Claire stared at the new arena. You used Battle God aura for landscaping. The garden needed work. The students cheered again. Adrian walked into the circle before the dust settled. I did not accept the duel that day. Keeping a rival waiting improved his technique and my schedule was full. The combat order wanted a demonstration. The legendary order wanted to know whether Damien would ever recover his old rank. Claire wanted access to every sealed archive in the Empire. Cole wanted a list of opponents more dangerous than the Titan. Grant wanted stronger training shields. I wanted a new coat. 3 days later, awakening classes resumed inside the rebuilt stadium. A new group of students placed their hands on a replacement crystal. None laughed when a nervous boy produced a weak class. They were too busy watching the rank 1 seat where I sat with the battle standard beside me and the broken sword across my knees. The crystal flashed gold when the final student finished. Far beyond the Empire, something answered. A thin gate appeared in the sky, visible only for a heartbeat. On the other side stood an unknown fighter beneath a warrior silhouette older than mine. Their aura crossed the distance and touched the mark in my palm. The Battle God class produced one final message. Worthy opponent detected. I stood so quickly that the stadium fell silent. Claire followed my gaze but saw only blue sky. Adrian saw my expression and reached for his sword. Cole began laughing before anyone told him why. For the first time since defeating Damien, I felt the same anticipation that had struck when Adrian's golden frame appeared on Awakening Day. Someone powerful was waiting. This time, I already knew how to make an entrance.